Chapter 1592. Suddenly, Tian Wu's words entered Su Yi's ears. So you should know that Master has been very concerned about you. He lost his position as one of the 10 vassals because of you, but he has never complained in front of anyone. Hearing this, Su Yi's face sank. The word, you, just now fully explained the importance of the Central Province Branch Palace Master to Elder Gyue. It was the greatest glory in his heart. Now that it was taken away because of him protecting Su Yi, one could imagine how disappointed Elder Gyue was. Su Yi's heart was filled with self-blame. Suddenly, he unconsciously clenched his fists and said in his heart, I will definitely take revenge for Elder Gyue. It's fine if he has a problem with me, but it's absolutely impossible for him to have a problem with someone who cares about me. By the way, Brother Tian Chong, did you see anyone from my Su family in the Yuqin Palace? Su Yi was slightly anxious and asked, Su family? Have you seen them? After Tian Wu finished talking about the Yuqin Palace, his face returned to its cold expression, and he asked the 2 disciples behind him. The 2 disciples also expressed that they did not know. We have been living on Lingyue Peak and have not seen your family. When you see Master in a while, ask him personally. Perhaps things will become clear then. Su Yi nodded gently and prayed in his heart that he did not come too late on this trip to the Yuqin Palace. If the Yuqin Palace did not keep their promise and caused even the slightest harm to Grandpa and the Su family, even if there was kindness, they would owe Elder Gyue too much. This debt would have to be settled separately. Behind him, Li Shiran and Ah Chu smelled a trace of unease in the air. They walked up and stood side by side with Su Yi, not knowing what to say. They knew that Su Yi was someone who would sacrifice his life for the people he was protecting. What are you afraid of? If something really happens to you, Big Sister will help you pierce through the sky. Han Yuro patted her chest as she looked at Su Yi and said righteously. Li Shiran couldn't help but chuckle softly, thinking that this Ms. Han not only likes to dress up as a man, but also speaks and acts with such a manly spirit. Coupled with such a beautiful face, she really is a valiant person. Su Yi thought to himself. Then, he smiled and nodded at Han Yuro. This girl must have an extraordinary status in the Infinite Sect. It was rare for her to be so down-to-earth. After a while, Tian Wu led Su Yi, Han Yuro, and Li Shiran to the top of Lingyue Peak. Although Lingyue Peak was only one of the 18 finger peaks, the distance between each of them was extremely far. Judging from this, it seemed to be extremely spacious. Looking into the distance from the top, the beautiful scenery of the entire Imperial Mountain Range could be seen. The grass and trees were warm yellow, and the sky was filled with spiritual birds. The spiritual energy that swept through the world rushed over layer after layer, like a continuous stretch of snowy mountains that flew for thousands of miles. It instantly made one feel relaxed and happy. The dense rays of sunlight illuminated the world and scattered over the entire Archkay Lake. It was like an extremely smooth and flat mirror. Between the towering mountains and lofty ridges, between the water and the sky, between the lake and the mountains, heaven and earth blended together. It was a magnificent and beautiful scene. This Lingyue Peak has such a majestic scene. The scenery of Imperial Mountain Range must be even more magnificent. Han Yuro couldn't help but exclaim softly with praise in her eyes. Incense burners and waterfalls look at each other from afar. The cliffs are steep and towering. Green shadows and red clouds reflect the morning sun. Birds can't fly to Wu Tianzhong. Between the magnificent view of the world, the vast river flows endlessly. The yellow clouds move for thousands of miles. The white waves flow through the snowy mountains. When Su Yi saw the majestic mountains and rivers in front of him, he couldn't help but let out the heroic feelings in his heart. The wild emotions in his chest surged like the Yangtze River as he sang to his heart's content. Good poem. Sect Master Su, since that's the case, this old man will also take advantage of the fact that I'm not old yet. Let me go. For 100 years, I've taught you to be drunk. 36,000 miles long. Suddenly, a dull and old voice came faintly from the entire Lingyue Peak. It was like the voice of a god from beyond the heavens that was hidden in the clouds. It made one's spirit tremble. Master, Tian Wu and the disciples behind him immediately knelt down with a respectful expression. Su-yi also recognized the voice of old man Guyu. The corners of his mouth curled into a smile as he cupped his hands towards the sky and said, "I hope Palace Master Guyu won't blame me for being late." "Ha ha ha. You're not late. You're just in time. Sect Master Su, bring your little friend in." Elder Giyue's voice came from the vast sky again. After that, there was no more sound. "Tian Wu, guard the Lingyue Villa. No one is allowed to enter. You must guard it," Elder Giyue told Tian Wu with his vital qi telepathy skill. Tian Wu's expression turned solemn, as if he was facing a great enemy. He nodded heavily. Tian Wu approached Su-yi and pointed at a small building in the northeast direction. He said gently, "Go in quickly. Master's inside. I'll help you guard the outside." Su-yi looked at it deeply and blinked. Then, he went into the small building with Han Yuro and the rest. Approaching the Lingyue Villa, Su-yi felt that the room was very ordinary at first. There was no aura of an expert at all. He was puzzled. Something big is going to happen in the Yuqian Palace. Elder Giyue is really calm for being able to sit still. He gently pushed the door open and walked through the corridor to a small hall. An old figure had been waiting there for a long time. Su-yi finally saw the old figure that he had not seen for a long time. "Long time no see, Sect Master Su." Elder Giyue was calm and composed as he smiled softly. It was still the same old figure. He was spirited but hale and hearty. His silver-white hair was combed into a bun, and he was wearing a plain robe with cloud patterns. He was always proud and kind. He was holding a cup of fragrant tea in his hand and carefully sipping it. "Palace Master Giyue, how have you been?" Seeing that Palace Master Giyue was in good spirits, Su-yi's heart immediately calmed down a little. "Palace Master Giyue, I've caused you to lose the position of Palace Master in Central State. I'm really uneasy." Su-yi suppressed the impatience in his heart and asked in doubt, "You don't have to blame yourself, Sect Master Su. The Palace Master has been in seclusion for many years, and the matters in the palace have always been handled by Vice Palace Masters Wichiofone. He has always been at odds with us 10 great vassals. The Commander Elders and Teaching Elders have always supported the Vice Palace Master, but we 10 great vassals have always supported the Palace Master. He only used an excuse to remove me. Perhaps I've been the Palace Master of Central State for a long time, and it's a good time for me to cultivate my character. Without the Palace Master, the Heavenly Command Palace has become a little foul. Fortunately, the Palace Master took pity on me and left Lingyue Peak to me. Otherwise, I wouldn't even have a place to stay." Giyue snorted heavily. Elder Giyue slowly shook his head and carefully observed the changes in Su-yi. His eyes were full of extraordinary splendor as he nodded lightly. "Let's not talk about that anymore. I didn't see wrongly. In just over a year, Sect Master Su actually has such amazing achievements. You're really a genius. However, Sect Master Su still has to let go of the soul control art." Chapter 1593. Su-yi smiled bitterly. All along the way, he had been relying on his heaven-grade soul to fight with others. The art of driving the heavens had stopped at the stage of cultivation. Up until now, he was still at the early stage of the 3rd grade. "I've neglected the cultivation of my soul, so I came here to ask for advice. I wonder if my grandfather is well. Did you bring them here?" Su-yi couldn't help but ask. Palace Master Giyue looked at Su-yi with a solemn expression and said, "Sect Master Su, when Zwichiophone demoted me and asked me to return to the Heavens Drive Creek, I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to help you take care of the Su family. So I went to find the Palace Master who was in seclusion." "What did the Palace Master say?" Su-yi was even more anxious. He wanted to know what happened later, so he asked softly. After a pause, Elder Giyue stroked his beard and said, "The Palace Master knows. Everything will be handled by the Palace Master, and he asked me to return to Lingyue Peak to rest. We'll talk after he comes out of seclusion." Su-yi couldn't help but stand up anxiously. However, Giyue's expression was even more solemn as he said, "However, since the palace master has promised me, he won't go back on his word. I guarantee with my life that the Su family will be safe and sound." Han Yuro frowned and said in shock, "What's the use of your guarantee? Can your life compare to the lives of hundreds of people?" "Miss Han." Su Yi pulled Han Yuro to his side with a solemn expression. The 6 continents, 3 continents, and 1 sea all had their own Shadow Hall disciples, but they hadn't heard any news about the Su family. His grandfather and the Su family indeed hadn't returned to Barbarian City. Until now, they had no choice but to trust him. Su Yi gritted his teeth and said, "Senior, you've saved me from danger many times, so I choose to believe you. However, if the palace master doesn't fulfill his promise, then I'll cause a commotion in the Heavens Drive Palace." Looking at Su Yi, Yue shook his head and smiled bitterly. Sect Master Su's temper hasn't changed at all. In 2 days, the Heaven Riding Soul competition would be held. The palace master, who had been in seclusion for many years, would also be attending. At that time, Sect Master Su could ask him and he would know. At that time, I'll see what Zhuqiu Feng does. Heavenly Soul Race? Elder Yue's expression changed, and he said, "Just now, Tianwu also gave you a detailed introduction of the Imperial Celestial Palace's situation, right? The Imperial Soul Competition is not only related to the future of all the headquarters disciples, but also related to the ranking of the ordinary elders. Other than the 18 strong elders, there were a total of 103 normal elders in Command Heavenly Palace. The several thousand disciples, other than their daily studies, also had to diligently study in front of their respective elders. 103 elders meant that there were 103 teams participating in the Soul Tournament. According to Elder Gyue, the Heavenly Soul Race placed the Soul Tournament as its main focus, and it was divided into cultivation, pill refinement, equipment refinement, and soul refinement. The Heavenly Soul Race was held once every 3 years. Every time a disciple obtained first place in a competition, the disciple would be able to obtain a benefit from the Imperial Celestial Palace. At the same time, the elder would be able to obtain a position in the next election of elders and become an expert elder in advance. If the same disciple were to obtain 2 first places, 3 first places, or even 4 first places, this would be unprecedented in history. Not only the disciples, but the elders would also be able to obtain the supreme reward from the Palace Master. This was extremely attractive. Since I've become an alchemist, then how can I still participate in the soul-controlling competition? Su Yi was slightly bewildered. Pill refinement, equipment refinement, soul refinement, and even cultivation required an extremely great amount of soul strength. So, the competition was usually carried out in groups, and soul-controlling masters were naturally the first to stand out. Even though pill refinement wasn't active in the soul refining competition, it could provide soul strength and utilize the formidable quality of the soul to help the alchemist refine even more formidable medicinal pills. It was the same for equipment refinement. Gyue explained faintly. The Heavenly Soul Race was an internal competition held by the Imperial Celestial Palace to select the most outstanding disciples and elders. The 18th elder was originally on the same level as the Vice Palace Master, so he couldn't participate. However, for the sake of fairness, the 18th elder could send out 4 to 5 people to strengthen the weaker teams and assist them from the side. Now that Elder Gyue had been demoted, he was no longer a commander elder, nor a teaching elder, nor was he a vassal elder. Therefore, Ling Yupeak was no different from an ordinary elder. Naturally, he was qualified to participate in the competition. Then what's the benefit this year? Su Yi was a little curious. The benefits are all randomly determined by the Palace Master. If you can win and make the Palace Master happy, then anything is possible. Elder Gyue took a sip of tea. He was full of smiles. Senior, then can I participate? Su Yi asked. Originally, I was an elder vassal, and you're not a member of the Heavenly Soul Palace. Naturally, you can't participate. Now, I'm nothing, just an ordinary Ling Yufeng. I don't have so many rules and regulations. I'll fight for a spot from the Central Plains for you to participate. Moreover, You're a soul controller above the heaven grade. Of course, you're strong enough to participate. I just don't know if you'll participate in martial cultivation or soul cultivation. If possible, I'll participate in both. Su-yi muttered. His eyes were filled with determination. Su-yi glanced at the surprised Elder Gua, Han-Yuro, and the others. As long as there are no restrictions, I hope they can participate and help Ling Yufeng win first place. Su-yi explained the situation to Elder Gua. He said softly, "Oh, the Li family of the Central Plains? I've been the palace master of the Central Plains for many years. I've always wanted to pay them a visit, but I didn't expect to encounter such a disaster. It's really sigh. Master Su, how about this? I'll personally bring the Li siblings for a test. Then, we'll decide which one to participate in. What do you think?" Bang! Just as Su-yi was about to answer, a heart-wrenching roar and the sound of metal clashing came from outside. Su-yi knew that it must be the second senior brother that Tian Chong mentioned earlier. Palace Master Guyue's eyes were filled with coldness. Su-yi also knew that Guyue had made a move, so he immediately said, "Palace Master Guyue, I was the one who caused this incident. I should be the one to solve it. Please bring Ah Chu and the others for a test. I'll be back soon." Han-Yuro was also a little anxious. She said anxiously, "I'll go with you." Swoosh! The two figures turned into streams of light and flew out of the building. Guyue's kind and gentle eyes were suddenly filled with anger. He said to Li Shiran and Ah Chu, "It seems that I haven't been out for a long time. Some people have forgotten what I look like. Little friend, come with me." As soon as he finished speaking, the energy around Elder Guyue dissipated. It was as if he had melted into the air and disappeared. There was only a string of light guiding the way in the void. Outside the Ling Yu villa, on the flat ground of the mountain, remnant souls were drifting, and killing intent filled the sky. There were traces of battle between remnant souls and vitality, chi erupting on the mountain. Chapter 1594. Tian Wu was panting heavily as the horsetail whisk in his hand fell to the ground. He used his palm to support himself on the mountain as he panted heavily, like a broken bellows. A tall man with bulging chest muscles had a sneer in his eyes. He said with a deep voice, "Tian Wu, weren't you running fast just now? Quickly hand over Su-yi." "What's Su-yi?" "I don't know." Tian Chong said furiously as he covered his chest. The one who spoke was the second senior brother of Jutian Palace, Ji Feibao. He was also a heaven-class soul controller. He had outstanding talent and was ruthless. He was also the personal disciple of one of the vice palace masters, Wu Kuan. From top to bottom, Jun Haoyan, the personal disciple of vice palace masters Wu Qiufeng, the personal disciple of vice palace master Wu Kuan, Ji Feibao, the personal disciple of vice palace master Cheng Gaoming, and Jin Xinyan. They were the big senior brother, second senior brother, and third senior brother of Jutian Palace. Tian Wu was the personal disciple of Elder Guyue. Lingyue Peak was ranked 7th among the 18 finger peaks. Therefore, Tian Wu was the 10th senior brother of Jutian Palace. To be able to become a personal disciple of Jutian Palace, all of them had heaven-class soul quality. However, in terms of soul controller grades, Ji Feibao was a beginner 4th grade soul controller, while Tian Wu was an advanced 3rd grade soul controller. There was a huge difference in strength. Soul controller grades range from 1st grade to 7th grade. A 4th grade soul controller was equivalent to the Origin Emperor realm. A 5th grade soul controller was equivalent to an Origin Ancestor realm expert. A 6th grade soul controller and above only existed in legends. No one had ever seen one before. Tian Wu and Ji Feibao's strength was equivalent to the difference between a half-step Origin Emperor and a 3rd-level Origin Emperor. They couldn't be compared at the same time. When Elder Guyue was the palace master of the Central State Branch Palace, Tian Wu had to help take care of the affairs of Lingyue Peak and travel between Lingyue Peak and the Central State. Cultivation was very important. More or less, Tian Wu would be delayed. It was normal for him to be defeated. Huff huff. Tian Wu's eyes were filled with killing intent as he stared at Ji Feibao. His hands were trembling nonstop. His chest had been scratched by the claws of the remnant souls. His flesh was badly mangled as red liquid flowed out. Junior brother Tian Ho, don't blame me for being ruthless. If you don't tell me, I'm going to force my way in. How dare you? Lingyue Peak is not a place for you to behave atrociously. If you want to catch someone, you'll have to do it over my dead body. Let's see if I dare. Ji Feibao bellowed furiously. A ray of light burst out from his palm, and an earth-shattering pressure whizzed over. Immediately, Ji Feibao displayed his early rank 4 soul, controlling cultivation. His heavenly grade soul pressed down on Tian Wu's body like a mountain. His flesh and blood were dripping as he spoke to Tian Wu. All right, where's your useless master? Was he trying to protect Su Yi? Don't you think Su Yi is a jinx? Pooh! Tian Ho felt as if his soul energy was being torn apart by the giant claw. His vision turned black, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. You're not allowed to talk about my master. A sharp glint flashed across Tian Wu's handsome face, and his eyes were filled with hatred for Ji Feibao. Just as he was about to fly up and fight to the death with Ji Feibao, Ji Feibao sent a flying kick at Tian Ho's head, causing another streak of blood to appear in the void. How dare you be so stubborn? Look at yourself. Where's your master? Haha, both master and disciple are useless. Where's Su Yi, whom you're protecting? How dare you protect the person who trespassed the imperial palace? Die. Ji Feibao was filled with killing intent. He formed a handprint in his hand, and the imperial palace art was activated. Looking coldly at Tian Wu, who was bleeding profusely on the ground, Ji Feibao spoke as if he was giving an ultimatum. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for following the wrong person. You shouldn't have gone against eldest senior brother. Open your eyes in your next life. In the blink of an eye, a stream of fire flew across the sky, and a figure that looked like a divine bird suddenly appeared. It was Su Yi and Han Yuro, who had rushed over from the Lingyue villa. Su Yi's long robe fluttered in the wind, and his clothes fluttered along with the wind. A biting, cold-killing intent shot out like a cold sword. He stared coldly at Ji Feibao and said, "Leave your leg behind, and I won't kill you." Within the imperial palace, Su Yi didn't need to care about the fights between fellow disciples. However, Tian Wu was beaten up by Ji Feibao because he wanted to buy time for himself. This was different. Su Yi was going to take revenge for this. Ji Feibao's lips curled up slightly as he looked at Su Yi. He squinted his eyes and sneered. "You're Su Yi? You're so young, but you're actually at the 4th level of the Origin Sovereign Realm. How rare." Before Ji Feibao could finish his sentence, his expression changed abruptly as he sneered. "No wonder you beat up junior brother Shoshan. It's a pity that you came to the wrong place. You shouldn't have brought a woman here." Han Yuro's gaze was cold as she said furiously, "Who are you talking about?" Su Yi twisted his body and shielded Han Yuro behind him, dodging an incomparably ferocious attack. Boom! Just as Ji Feibao finished his sentence, his body flickered with a huge radiance. An earth attribute goldenback fire lizard's remnant soul instantly rose behind him. The goldenback fire lizard's mouth was filled with sharp fangs as it spat out lava from its mouth, exploding like a bomb. The mountains exploded one after another, and the scorching hot lava brought about ripples that distorted the space as the gigantic lizard approached at high speed. Su Yi was stunned. Ji Feibao wasn't a pushover as his strength couldn't be underestimated. His soul power was something that Su Yi had never seen before. Just the fact that Ji Feibao could summon the remnant soul so easily meant that Ji Feibao's level was much higher than Su Yi's. He should be a rank 4 soul controller. His strength is equivalent to the 3rd to 4th level of the Origin Emperor realm. Han Yuro said softly with a grave expression. Su Yi calmed down and analyzed the enemy's strength. Since he couldn't win with his soul power, he would suppress him directly. Take care of Tian Wu. I will deal with him. Su Yi was furious. In a split second, Su Yi fully unleashed his strength at the 4th level of the Origin Emperor realm. The Origin Supreme technique in his body was like a whirlpool as waves of energy rushed out from his body. This time, Su-yi was prepared to fight violence with violence and fight speed with speed. In an instant, Su-yi's skyward 100 transformation steps produced countless afterimages in the air. He circulated the art of driving heaven at the same time to resist Ji Feibao's powerful soul suppression. What are you waiting for? Kill that woman. Ji Feibao roared at the disciples behind him. As though they had just woken up from a dream, they saw that Han Yuro was the only one beside Tianwu. The Imperial Palace is nothing more than this. Trash that bully with numbers. Han Yuro knitted her brows and circulated her cultivation as a rank 3 soul controller like Su-yi. A suppressive soul power pressed down on the disciples of the Imperial Palace. Chapter 1595. Third level heaven grade. A few disciples of the soul manipulator master exclaimed. Subsequently, all sorts of remnant souls appear behind them and clashed with Han Yuro. In an instant, there were continuous sonic booms on Lingyue Peak. The terrifying lava overturned the soil layer and gushed out. The scorching remnant lava sprayed into the sky. Su-yi twisted and turned in the air a few times, and after a series of somersaults, he was already familiar with the attacks. Su-yi looked for an opportunity, and the fire attribute light in his hand exploded once again. The endless palm prints that filled the air were domineering and destructive. Fiery Skynet palm. Rumble. In an instant, the fiery shadow filled the sky. The ripples in the entire void twisted and swept out. Countless fiery waves rushed towards the golden-backed fire lizard like snakes and formed a terrifying wall of fire. Instantly, the entire mountain peak began to tremble. Terrifying tongues of fire danced in the air, rendering the entire sky scorching hot. The entire horizon seemed to be surging with crimson lava. Everyone's face revealed a hint of shock. This is too terrifying. He actually blocked senior brother Feibao's soul spirit energy. Bang! In less than 15 minutes, the afterimage collapsed. Su-yi's body was surging with divine radiance. The demonic demon god battle armor was glowing faintly with a golden color. His body looked as though it was made of steel and looked majestic. On the cliff, his beard and hair were fluttering. His eyes were filled with killing intent. PFFF. Ji Feibao was like a kite with a broken string. His clothes were scorched black, and his eyes were filled with astonishment and fear. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fell onto the fiery red stone wall. Black smoke was constantly emitting from his body. He was in a sorry state. The smell of roasted flesh was carried by the mountain breeze. How can you be so strong? Impossible. Ji Feibao's eyes widened like copper bells. What made Ji Feibao even more surprised was Su-yi's physical strength. The collision of the two produced such a huge impact, but Su-yi didn't retreat at all. This wasn't the physical strength that an Origin Emperor should have. Su-yi's expression was cold. He leaped in front of Ji Feibao and was fuming with anger. He curled his lips into a smile and said, "You want to play with fire with me? I'm afraid you got the wrong person. I hope you don't play with fire in your next life. Playing with fire will get you burned." On Han Yuro's side, she had also finished her battle. Clapping her hands, she fed the heavenly barge a few medicinal pills. Behind her, several disciples of the Imperial Celestial Palace were lying on the ground, wailing and groaning. "Su-yi, spare my life. I'm not the one who is against you." Ji Feibao felt Su-yi's bone-chilling murderous intent and instantly softened as he spoke. Su-yi smiled and said softly, "If you're not targeting me, then your eldest senior brother is targeting me." Ji Feibao remained silent. His eyes were clearly filled with fear. He swallowed a mouthful of saliva and was unwilling to reply. Looking at Ji Feibao's trembling appearance, Su-yi's heart was filled with disdain. "I won't make things difficult for you." "Then where are they? Tell me, and I'll spare your life." "They're still having a regular meeting at the peak before the earthquake. I'm in charge of checking if the heavenly barge is looking for you." Ji Feibao's eyes were filled with fear. Su-yi clapped his hands and looked into the distance. Instantly, A flame of anger rose in his heart as he said, Zwichio Foam, you've been making things difficult for me even before you came in. After you came in, you found someone to kill me? It seems like you don't want to be a human, but insist on being a ghost. Bang! A blazing lightning flame roared out from Su Yi's right hand and hit Ji Feibao's leg. A crisp sound was heard. Crack! Another miserable shriek resounded from the Lingyue Peak, like a pig being slaughtered, resounding through the clouds. Ji Feibao and the disciples of the Imperial Celestial Palace beside him couldn't stop breathing in cold air. Their veins were bulging. They didn't expect Su Yi to really dare to attack him, the second senior brother of the Imperial Celestial Palace. Are you really going to fall out with the Deputy Palace Master of the Imperial Celestial Palace? Han Yuro turned to look at Su Yi and asked with a slight frown, Why? Are you afraid? Or are you afraid of causing trouble for the immeasurable sect? Su Yi turned around with a deep gaze. I'm not afraid. I'm here to show my power to the Imperial Celestial Palace. It's the same whether you give it to me sooner or later. Han Yuro shrugged her shoulders and turned her head away without any trace of politeness. Su Yi withdrew his vital qi and looked at the magnificent building in the Zhongzhen Front Range. He said, The Imperial Celestial Palace has always been protective of their disciples. I would like to see why Elder Gyue can't be biased when Ji Feibao is biased. The matter between his grandfather and the Su clan couldn't be delayed for even a moment. He made up his mind. It would be best if he could lure the palace master over. Vital Qi suddenly rose under his feet as he stepped on the mystic handle and headed towards the Zhongzhen Front Range. After the two of them left, the disciples of the Imperial Celestial Palace surrounded the unconscious Ji Feibao with lingering fear in their eyes. Who are these two? How could they be so heavy-handed? Hurry up and inform eldest senior brother and vice palace master. Su Yi kept increasing his speed as he shuttled back and forth between the mountain peaks that were filled with the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. Han Yuro gradually fell behind him. Damn it, did this brat grow wings? He's so fast. The vital qi around Han Yuro's body surged crazily as the water attribute rose from her feet. Radiance surged as she finally managed to maintain a certain distance from Su Yi. In less than half a day, Su Yi and Han Yuro arrived at the Zhongzhen Front Range. On the mountain peak, there was a huge Yin-Yang plaza. It was black on the left and white on the right. In the white, there was the sun, and in the black, there was the moon. As they overlapped, Su Yi's heaven origin demon soul instantly felt a boundless energy that transcended heaven and earth. Such powerful energy, Su Yi couldn't help but exclaim in his heart. He immediately circulated the art of driving the heavens. The spiritual qi of heaven and earth surged into his meridians and flowed continuously in his wide meridians. Finally, it merged with the heaven origin demon soul. The art of driving the heavens also rippled with mystical runes around his body. On the other hand, in a certain meeting hall on the Zhongzhen Peak, at the head of the table was an old man in a cloud-white robe that dragged on the ground. His long gray hair was combed behind his back, and his sleeves fluttered in the wind. He had a wide forehead and a large face, and his bearing was long. The space between his brows was filled with the aura of a superior. There were two old men on his left and right, and there were even 17 elders below him. They were sitting upright and still as they discussed in low voices. Then this is how the soul match will be conducted. Does anyone have any objections? The gray-haired old man asked with a serious expression. Whoosh! Suddenly, a wave of boundless energy of heaven and earth surged into the hall. Everyone present was a group of experts in the cultivation of the soul, so how could they not know what had happened? They instantly stood up while a wisp of shock appeared on their aged faces. Where did such powerful soul energy come from? An elder below him spoke in a low voice. Vice Palace Master, let's leave the soul match as it is for now. Let's go out and take a look. Could it be that the Palace Master has come out of closed-door cultivation? Vice Palace Master Zwichio Feng's heart jerked when he thought about the Palace Master coming out of closed-door cultivation. He flicked his sleeve and said, Let's go. Let's go take a look. Chapter 1596. Boom! There was a violent impact in the sky as the rapidly accumulating dark clouds covered the sun. The dense spirit energy in the sky was like a whale sucking in water. A pillar of water soared to the sky and poured into Su Yi's head. Su Yi, who was sitting on the ground, could feel waves of extremely dense spirit energy. They were like little snakes slithering around freely in his wide meridians. They gradually fused with the blazing Tan Yuan demon soul and nourished the depths of Su Yi's soul. Streams of warm energy spread around the Tian Yuan demon soul, and Su Yi immediately felt refreshed. The spirit energy here, together with the grand formation of the plaza, can actually nourish the soul. Su Yi was overjoyed. Looking at the strange phenomenon in the sky, Han Yuro's eyes widened in confusion. Isn't this guy's first time at the Heavenly Palace? How can he know the Heavenly Palace art and attract the remnant soul of the Flood Dragon God? This guy's aura seems to be a bit similar to Father's. Too magical. Han Yuro stared at Su Yi, endless thoughts piling up in her mind like pieces of paper, causing her curiosity towards Su Yi to reach a new height. It seemed that the greatest gain from this trip to the Imperial Celestial Palace was Su Yi, Han Yuro thought to herself. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Han Yuro raised her eyes and shook the front peak. There were constantly figures shuttling around the palace. Some young disciples of the Heavenly Palace began to gather in front of the palace. Countless cracks began to appear on the white jade floor. The onlookers didn't dare to step forward after seeing the strange phenomenon in the sky. What's going on? Why is there such a strange phenomenon in the plaza? Is the palace lord back? No, look, there's someone there. Who is that? How can he have such a powerful soul? Bang, bang. More and more dark clouds appeared, and the sound of thunder resounded in the sky. It was like a heavy thunder hammer falling from the 9 heavens, bombarding Su Yi's surroundings. All kinds of remnant souls surrounded Su Yi. Beast shadows were everywhere, and their roars were like thunder. The 4 Yuan Qi attributes of earth, wood, water, and fire surged around Su Yi's body like a divine ring. His aura was extremely intense, and the remnant souls that were drawn out correspondingly were the Blackwood Heavenly Colt, the fire-scaled poisonous scorpion, the water spirit 9-horned rhinoceros, and the earth shell turtle. 4 kinds of soul remnants surged out, bringing with them rays of bright light. They rapidly condensed into a vast energy space in the sky. Boundless soul pressure filled the space, echoing with the rumbling sound of wind and thunder, spreading into the distance. In front of Zhongzhen Peak, a tall and slender young man in his late 20s was holding a horsetail whisk. His eyes were like the cold stars, and his curved eyebrows were like sharp swords. He stood like an orchid tree, and his teeth were as white as the moon. Looking at the strange phenomenon in front of him, he gradually frowned. There was a slightly younger person standing behind him, and he said respectfully to the young man in front of him, "Eldest senior brother, do you want me to kill him?" It turned out that the young man on the roof was the eldest disciple of the Heavenly Palace, Jun Haoyan. He said coldly as he looked at Su Yi, whose divine ring was rippling in the distance. To be able to come here, there are 2 reasons. Firstly, Ji Feibao has already failed. Secondly, he has enough courage and ability. With such ability, the master who is having a meeting in the hall will definitely not sit by and do nothing. Why should we steal the limelight? If you survive this calamity and want to destroy him, do it in the Soul Tournament. He will also participate in the Soul Tournament. He is not from the Heavenly Palace. Jin Xianyun, who was behind him, was puzzled. Old Guyue has always been on bad terms with Master. Don't forget that the Central Region still has a quota. Don't you think that Su Yi's timing is too coincidental? Jin Xianyun nodded deeply and looked at the hall. More than 10 figures flew out. As their auras surged, the sky changed color again. The dark clouds dissipated, and the strange phenomenon disappeared. The left palace master is here, and all the experts and elders. Sigh, this kid is probably doomed. Roar. The four remnant souls instantly dissipated. The majestic chi of heaven and earth that had just been activated, along with a terrifying aura of primordial chi, fiercely rushed into the sky, creating a few continuous sounds of impact. Bang, bang, bang. The remnant energy that fell down once again caused the entire square to ripple like a tidal wave. At this time, in a deep place behind the peak of the central region, Li Shiran and Ah Chu were waiting outside. The results of the test just now made the two of them very excited. The two of them kept chatting with each other with their faces flushed red. They did not care about the strange phenomenon in the front peak at all. And in the deep place, Ge, who was in his 80s, was still respectfully bowing to a noble figure. From the view of her back, the woman's curves were perfect, and the skin on her back that was slightly exposed was as smooth as cream. It was extremely tempting, and between her makeup and jade-like makeup, one could see that she was a celestial beauty, like a fairy from the heavens. Guyue said, "Palace Master, it seems that the person we have been waiting for so many years should be him. To be able to activate the remnant soul of the white flood dragon god and directly learn the art of controlling the heavens. Is it really him this time?" A faint female voice came out. It was very pleasant to listen to, and it was full of firmness. It was obvious that she had an extremely profound soul ability. "There is movement at the peak. Elder Guyue, please go and take a look. You must make sure that he enters the heavens controlling soul competition. I want to see him in person." "Is his family?" Guyue asked tentatively. The woman's voice was loud and clear, like an orchid in an empty valley, very pleasant to the ear. "The two little guys outside are competing with him. If their performance is not good enough, not to mention the Su family, these two little guys will disappear together." Whoosh! Suddenly, a piece of jade flew out from the woman's chest and drew an arc in the air before landing in the hands of Guyue. Guyue looked at it and his eyes lit up. The woman's words just now made Guyue's heart skip a beat. He immediately lowered his body and said, "This old man knows. This old man will take his leave." Then Guyue quickly turned and left. His footsteps were fast and powerful, as if he was riding the wind. However, his silver-white eyebrows were wrinkled. "Excellent. How do you define this? Even that person only got first place twice." Dong dong. Elder Guyue asked Li Shiran and Ah Chu to wait for a moment. Looking at the strange phenomenon in the distance, the majestic heaven and earth spirit chi surging, he couldn't help but shake his head. "This little guy, he really makes a lot of noise wherever he goes. I have to make sure that you don't die first." The yuan chi under his feet suddenly rose, and the yuan chi above the void swept through the sky. The invisible aura collapsed the sky. Elder Guyue's figure was already 100 feet away. Zhongshan front peak on the square. Su Yi slightly opened his eyes. The sudden disappearance of the spirit chi caused the heaven origin demon soul in his heart to tremble. The art of controlling the heavens was quickly condensed, and his hand seals were constantly changing. After adjusting his breath for a while, he returned to normal. Chapter 1597. Suddenly, Su Yi opened his eyes while a strand of foul air was exhaled from his throat, whereas Han Yuro had already been suppressed to the point of gasping for breath by the soul energy of an expert, and she gazed at Su Yi. "You're making so many people accompany you in your cultivation. You're quite ostentatious." When he heard this, Su Yi was able to see 20 experts lined up in a row in the sky before him, and every single one of them were glaring fiercely at him with bewilderment on their faces. Under the guidance of a shapeless aura, soul energy was vast and deep like the depths of the ocean, causing the temperature in the surroundings to drop abruptly while the air seemed to have frozen. Su Yi flipped over and restrained his aura slightly before circulating the Origin Supreme technique to envelop Han Yuro. At this moment, she was already slightly powerless. He moved closer to Han Yuro and said, "When did these people arrive? They've been here for a while, yet not a single one of them dared to come forward. All of them are cowards." After that, Hanyuro felt much more relaxed and sent a voice transmission with a smile on her face. The cloud-striped old man at the center had white hair on his temples, and he gazed coldly at Su-yi as he said coldly, "Who's there? How dare you enter my sect, guarding Grand Formation, and disturb the spirit energy of my Heaven Drive River?" Su-yi stood up slightly and said in a low voice to the group of people in the sky that emanated imposing auras, "I'm Su-yi." He mustered up all his strength to speak, and it instantly caused waves of fluctuations to sweep through the sky, causing the expressions of Zhuoqiu Feng and the other two Vice Palace Masters to change slightly. "Kid, you actually possess such a thick aura. You actually didn't yield under such powerful pressure from us. The quality of your soul is extremely good." Zhuoqiu Feng carefully sized up Su-yi and noticed that not only did Su-yi's expression remain unchanged, his aura was powerful like a surging river, and his bright and deep eyes were filled with killing intent and boundless rage. Zhuoqiu Feng cleared his throat before he raised his gaze, and his aged voice sounded out faintly. "Kid, do you know your crime of trespassing into my Heaven Drive Palace?" Su-yi scratched his ear and seemed to be rather impatient as he said, "What crime? What crime do you think I am guilty of?" After that, Su-yi's skyward transformation steps rose up from beneath his feet. Fire element energy coiled and sprayed out, and it emanated a monstrous and dazzling glow that was like a flaming dragon. Gradually, Su-yi's figure rose up to the same height as Zhuoqiu Feng. "How dare you? You're not a disciple of my Heavenly Command Palace. Yet you've implicated my Central State Branch Palace and the Sacred Mountain, disturbing my Mountain Guardian Flood Dragon God's cultivation, and you still dare to spout nonsense here." The light in Zhuoqiu Feng's eyes skyrocketed as the energy in his body erupted with soul energy and blasted explosively towards Su-yi. Along the way, the space directly cracked open, and numerous spatial ripples shook out like ripples. Bang! Su-yi didn't show weakness as well. The fierce energy in his body surged explosively, causing peerless ripples of light to instantly flow as hand seals condensed out like bolts of lightning, and an extremely enormous soul energy that carried a terrifying soul aura undulated out and covered the heavens and the earth as it enveloped down towards Zhuoqiu Feng. Boom! Uft. The heavenly origin demon soul instantly dimmed down greatly, and a fishy smell sprayed out from its chest as it retreated explosively in midair for a few steps before barely stopping. On the other hand, Zhuoqiu Feng flicked his sleeve, and Su-yi's soul energy was instantly dispersed completely. Swoosh! The gazes of everyone present converged onto Su-yi. If it was an ordinary person, their soul would have collapsed from the peerless soul energy from before, yet Su-yi was actually able to go head-on against Vice Palace Master Zhuoqiu Feng with a strength at the early 3rd rank. Every single one of the 10+ experts and elders by his side were experts in soul control, and they couldn't help but nod to themselves in praise. This kid's bones and tendons are extraordinarily good, and his soul is heaven-defying. If he's able to enter my Heavenly Command Palace, then it can be considered as a good fortune. A divine light flashed in the eyes of Vice Palace Master Wu Kuan, and he moved closer to Zhuoqiu Feng's ear and said, "Left Palace Master, this kid has a ruthless character. If we don't subdue him today, then he'll use the name of the Heavenly Command Palace in the future, and that would be extremely bad." On the other hand, the other Vice Palace Master, Cheng Gaoming, said in a light voice, "Left Palace Master, he seems to be using our Heavenly Command technique." When he focused his gaze and looked carefully, Zhuoqiu Feng was able to sense the aura of the Heavenly Command Palace on Su-yi, and he shouted furiously, "Kid, where did you cultivate the Heavenly Command technique from?" Hanyuro had a surprised expression when she heard this, and she turned to look at Su-yi and said in a light voice, "What? You're cultivating the Heavenly Command technique?" Su-yi had always wondered if the Heavenly Command Palace and the Heavenly Command technique were closely related, and now it would seem like his guess was absolutely correct. However, Su-yi knew that the old man beneath the cliff had taught him and based on Zhuqiu Feng's appearance, it seemed like the old man wasn't a good thing for them, so he definitely couldn't expose his senior's whereabouts. I don't know what you're talking about. If you want to know something, then ask your palace master to come out and ask me. He spoke with a frown. At this moment, he circulated the Origin Supreme technique, Heavenly Demon Scripture, and Heavenly Command technique at the same time, causing his soul energy to be like a blazing sun that emitted a scorching glow and caused numerous ripples to form. On the roof tiles in the distance, Jun Haoyan and Jin Qinyun frowned at the same time, and Jin Qinyun said in a light voice, "This bastard is too shameless. He stole our Heavenly Command technique and even wants to barge into the Heavenly Command Palace. I really don't know who gave him the courage." On the other hand, a trace of hesitation flashed on Jun Haoyan's calm face, and the space between his brows was filled with coldness. He raised his eyes and continued watching while he muttered, "Did he really steal it? Qinyun, if you stole the Heavenly Command technique, would you be able to use it as smoothly as he did?" Jin Qinyun scratched his head and puckered his lips. "All right, I admit that he's very formidable indeed. Even though he's only at the early 3rd rank, his potential is enormous. He's a very formidable opponent." The corners of Jun Haoyan's mouth twitched slightly, and he continued looking ahead and said, "Then let's continue watching. The show is about to begin." As Cheng Gaoming and Wu Kuan looked at Su Yi's awe-inspiring appearance and his figure that was slightly slanted due to the heavy injury from before, they felt that he was very familiar. "Left Palace Master, does this person look like that person?" Zhuqiu Feng's eyes spun as he instantly gasped and spoke loudly. "Shameless kid, since you're of unknown origin, I'll deal with you today." Bang! With a loud shout, Zhuqiu Feng's figure condensed, and a terrifying soul attack instantly erupted. Terrifying energy ripples spread out and swept out, and it directly shattered the space beneath him as easily as crushing dry weeds. In an instant, the air was like a turbid wave that charged towards Su Yi. "Su Yi, watch out." This was no small matter, and Su Yi was absolutely unable to resist it. Han Yuro charged forward and circulated her origin energy to use her body to resist the attack that was like a storm. "No!" Su Yi's eyes almost split apart as he roared explosively. In an instant, his figure charged out like a bolt of lightning. He turned around in midair and instantly used his back to face Han Yuro, and he hugged her tightly and completely protected her. Han Yuro's aura instantly weakened when she entered his embrace, and the soul attack from before instantly caused her spirit to become dispirited. Chapter 1598. Su Yi turned around, and his eyes were filled with rage and killing intent. However, an aged figure stood before him and easily dispersed the attack from before. The entire sky cleared up once more, and the soul pressure that filled the sky instantly eased up greatly. "Zhuqiu Feng, how audacious of you! Are you trying to violate the rules left behind by your ancestors by killing a heaven-ranked soul, Rider Master of Command Palace?" It was precisely Elder Gyue who'd arrived. Elder Gyue's brows knit together tightly, while the energy around him surged explosively. His mid-5th rank cultivation surged with all his might, causing spatial ripples to surge once more and sweep towards the distance. When Zhuqiu Feng and all the other experts and elders saw this person clearly, their expressions instantly changed, and some of the experts and elders even shut their mouths tightly, because Elder Guyu's reputation was renowned throughout the Heavenly Command Palace. As one of the 10 vassals of Command Palace, Elder Gyue was on equal footing with the Vice Palace Master. His strength was an extremely formidable existence in Command Palace, and coupled with his fiery temper when he was young, everyone was shocked when they saw Elder Gyue act like this. Elder Gyue has come to cause trouble. His rage from being exempted is finally about to erupt. Command Palace is going to be bustling now. Look. The spectators whispered in discussion while looking anxiously at the battle between the experts of Command Palace. This was a rare spectacle. It's the first time I've seen Elder Gyue lose his temper, and I didn't see him so furious even when he was exempted. The distant Jin Xinyan was extremely surprised and spoke softly. Jun Haoyan's slender finger brushed past his chin as he gazed at the changes in the situation while pondering slightly, and he remained silent. Gu Yue, you're not an elder anymore. Don't meddle in the business of others. Zhuqiu Feng spoke coldly. Gu Yue roared with laughter when he heard this, and his voice was like a bell that drifted through the grand formation on the square. The disciples of Command Palace at the side all closed their ears and revealed bitter expressions. Zhuqiu Feng, even though I'm not an elder, I'm still an elder of the Heavenly Drive Palace. If you want to kill a heaven-ranked soul rider master, then step over my dead body. Zhuqiu Feng was instantly infuriated. His beard stood on end while flames of rage arose between his brows, and he shouted. Not to mention the matter of him implicating the Heavenly Drive Palace. Merely the matter of him disturbing the Flood Dragon God's cultivation and secretly learning the Heavenly Drive technique is sufficient to tear him into pieces. You can ask him yourself if he is orthodox or not. Gu narrowed his eyes and turned around. He looked at Su Yi and asked, Sect Master Su, where did you get this art of driving the heavens? Su Yi retracted his yuan qi and looked at Elder Gu Yue. Without hiding anything, he sighed and said, Senior, what I have learned is indeed the art of controlling the heavens, but I cannot tell you where I learned it from. As for whether it's orthodox or not, I'm afraid yours can't be considered orthodox either, right? Everyone burst into laughter after hearing this. Someone dared to say that the driving scripture of the driving heavens palace wasn't orthodox. Wasn't this the biggest joke in the world? All of you shut your mouths. All of you said he disturbed the Flood Dragon God, so go disturb him as well. If the Flood Dragon God pays any attention to all of you, then I'll leave right away. Palace Master Gu Yue's aged voice spread out faintly, and a shapeless aura stretched out in the sky. The bustling square was instantly covered in an extremely icy cold aura, and it directly caused the expressions of everyone to change. The white flood dragon god had always been absorbing the spirit energy of the heavens and the earth at the entrance of the cloud prefecture, and its strength was extremely formidable. It had never been concerned with the world, so no one knew how Su Yi had offended it, and many people hadn't even seen it before. Looks like this old fellow is bound to protect this person today. Wu Kuan and Cheng Gaoming glanced at each other and spoke via voice transmission. How could Zhuqiu Feng not know? He'd caused trouble for Zhuqiu Feng numerous times, and he'd been refuted by Elder Gu Yue with a few words. Zhuqiu Feng's face turned ashen, and it was completely gloomy and icy cold. Gu Yue, don't cause trouble here. If he thinks my art of controlling the heavens is unorthodox, then let my art of controlling the heavens meet this young brother's orthodox art of controlling the heavens. The surrounding crowd of spectators discussed animatedly, and many of them were extremely surprised. The Vice Palace Master wants to seize this opportunity to kill Su Yi. Something seems to be off. Su Yi's art of controlling the heavens is indeed slightly different from ours. Elder Gu Yue has fallen into the Vice Palace Master's trap. If you want face, then feel free to come at me. Gu Yue didn't even raise his eyelids as he grunted coldly, and then he flicked his sleeve. Instantly, numerous ripples arose in space. Senior Gu Yue, it's fine. Do what you want to do. I supported you in the past, and I'll still support you today. You, Gu Yue, I've tolerated you many times out of consideration for the fact that you were once an elder. You want to take him away? You don't have to give me an explanation. You just have to give the entire Heaven's controlling palace and all the disciples of Heaven's controlling palace that were injured by him. Zhuqiu Feng spoke with hatred. Fei Bao. Zhuqiu Feng was extremely vicious to kill with a borrowed knife. Wu Kuan instantly recalled that Ji Fei Bao had gone to Linghua Peak to capture Su Yi and hadn't returned after so long. So Ji Fei Bao had definitely fallen into a trap. Su Yi, why haven't I, Fei Bao, returned after so long? Su Yi's eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at Wu Kuan, and he said indifferently, Don't blame others for being inferior. You, I'll kill you. The heavens controlling palace's soul competition was about to begin. Now, something had happened to Ji Fei Bao, and he couldn't participate. How great of a loss was this? Zhuo Feng was already infuriated, and he gave Wu Kuan a signal with his eyes. Wu Kuan shouted loudly as his hand seals instantly changed. Instantly, palm-sized lights converged, and then a flowing light flashed before the ancient bell in his hand transformed into a few hundred-meter-long waterfall that circled in the sky. How presumptuous! Wu Kuan, you think you can? Guyue shouted with a grim voice. As soon as the ancient bell appeared, numerous ancient auras instantly suffused the sky, and everyone in the surroundings felt absolute pressure. Shit! It's Palace Master Wu Kuan's Soul Dao artifact, the Soul Annihilation Bell. Everyone present was shocked in their hearts when they saw the Soul Annihilation Bell. Palace Master Wu has actually taken out such a formidable weapon, and he's determined to fight until the end. Exactly what ability does Su Yi possess to make the Palace Masters and Elders fight like this? Jin Xinyun's eyes almost fell to the ground, and he was extremely puzzled. On the other hand, the corners of Jun Haotian's mouth curled into a light smile instead, and he understood clearly in his heart. It seemed to be a fight between Su Yi, yet it was actually a fight between a few old fellows. To put it bluntly, it was a fight between the Vice Palace Master and the Palace Master. Since he'd entered the palace until now, the heavens controlling palace had been managed by his master, Zhuo Feng, and as time passed, everyone had forgotten the existence of the Palace Master. But the old fellows still considered themselves as the orthodox members of the heavens controlling palace, and they supported the Palace Master that was illusory and didn't care about important matters. Stomp! Wu Kuan, even you have come to seek death, Guyue shouted angrily. Subsequently, the buzzing sound of the ancient bell filled the sky as it revolved, and it carried an all-pervasive soul attack that instantly struck everyone. Everyone present circulated the heavens controlling technique and started to resist the Vice Palace Master's soul attack. Chapter 1599. The sound of the bell instantly swept through the square, and those with low cultivations were instantly affected. Blood sprayed from their mouths as their bodies were instantly blasted back, and their faces were ghastly pale. The soul sound wave reverberated in the air, and it rumbled without end. Su Yi's heart shook, and Han Yuro, who was in his embrace, frowned tightly. She obviously felt uncomfortable, and she hurriedly utilized the Heaven Control Art and Origin Supreme technique to isolate the sound wave. Bang! Su Yi looked at Wu Kuan, who had an evil smile, and his gaze sank. When he was about to fight with all his might, Guyue's energy barrier enveloped the air before him, and it protected Su Yi and Han Yuro behind him. At the same time, a white glow surged out from Guyue's hand and spread out. The pressure on Su Yi instantly vanished, and the formidable soul sound wave attack transformed into nothingness. His robe fluttered. Water attribute energy that covered the sky instantly converged and enveloped the sky, and along with numerous strange hand seals condensing in his hand, the water attribute energy in the sky grew more and more, and the energy covered the heavens and the earth. The water energy collided tightly with Wu Kuan's Soul Annihilation Bell in midair, and the majestic water dragon roar transformed into an enormous sonic boom that shook the ripples in the sky apart. The enormous ripples were like the waves of a tsunami, and they forcefully shattered open spatial rifts. In an instant, the sound of the bell resonated, and the heavens and the earth trembled. Bang! Two sonic booms collided with each other, and an extremely ear-piercing and unpleasant sound erupted, and it caused one's ears to go numb. The sound wave collided, and the space was torn apart layer by layer. A small rift was formed, and it was instantly covered by dense spirit energy. At a low altitude, the space trembled, and the ear-piercing sound instantly vanished. Guyue took 2 steps back, whereas Wu Kuan continuously took over 10 steps back before he could stop himself. His robe trembled slightly, and a monstrous aura spread out from his body. Shapeless wind attribute energy enveloped his body, and his entire body emitted a peerlessly overbearing aura. How could Elder Gyue not know Su Yi's temper and Wu Kuan's character? The enmity between them would probably be completely formed from today onward. As the Vice Palace Master, Zhuqiu Feng didn't do anything during these years, and he wholeheartedly wanted to ascend to the position. However, he was extremely cautious and only knew how to fight among himself. He didn't have the graceful bearing of the Heaven Control Palace from all those years. Gyue, who came out from the depths, already knew what the Palace Master meant. Even if Su Yi wasn't a disciple of the Palace Master, with the Palace Master's words, Gyue would protect Su Yi today no matter what. Wu Kuan's clothes were torn to shreds as he stared at Elder Gyue, dumbfounded. He didn't expect Gyue to be so ruthless to him, a Vice Palace Master. After Cheng Gaoming fed Wu Kuan the medicinal pill, Zhuqiu Feng glanced at Wu Kuan, and then the corners of his mouth curled up slightly while his gaze raised. Everyone couldn't help but gasp. Zhuqiu Feng provoked Wu Kuan and Elder Gyue because of this. Su Yi glanced deeply at Elder Gyue with an indifferent expression, and he seemed to have guessed that Zhuqiu Feng would do this since the beginning. He slowly withdrew a bright jade command token from his hand. It was in the shape of a cloud, flowed with multicolored lights, was extremely warm, and was suffused with deep soul energy. Zhuqiu Feng, so it turns out that after all these years, you didn't cultivate wholeheartedly when you were the Palace Master, and you started playing tricks instead. The nearby Cheng Gaoming had a sharp gaze instead, and he discerned the origins of the thing in Elder Gyue's hand, and he exclaimed with surprise. The Palace Master's Jade Command Token. Zhuqiu Feng broke out in cold sweat right after that, and he stared fixedly at it before his heart instantly went cold as he said, Why? Why would it be in your hands? What? The Palace Master's Jade Command Token. Isn't the Palace Master in closed-door cultivation? Could it be that Elder Gyue planned all of this beforehand? The left Palace Master is going to suffer this time. Wu Kuan, Cheng Gaoming, and Zhuqiu Feng colluded with each other and occupied the Heaven Rider Palace for a long time. Everyone is clearly aware of how many experts and elders are their direct subordinates. The surrounding disciples and ordinary elders discussed in low voices, and it directly caused the expressions of the three elders and some experts to turn livid, and they were at a loss for what to do. On the other hand, the 10 great vassals that returned from the Heaven Rider Soul Tournament prostrated themselves in worship towards Elder Gyue, and they knelt down and said, Palace Master of Heaven Rider Palace. Elder Gyue had a solemn expression as he pointed the Jade Command Token towards the sky, and his gaze was like a sword that covered the horizon with coldness as he said to the three of them, Seeing the Heaven Rider Cloud Command Token is like seeing the Sect Master. Quickly kneel. Are you waiting to rebel? His voice was like a thunderclap that struck down from the 9 heavens, and every single word he spoke was resolute as it exploded in the hands of the 10+ elders. Zhuqiu Feng didn't dare delay any longer, and the heavily injured Wu Kuan rolled and crawled before kneeling down. All of them said in unison, Palace Master of Heaven Rider Palace. Instantly, the entire Central Quake Peak was filled with shouts that were like a tsunami, and some disciples had excited expressions while their faces flushed red. During the days that Zhuqiu Feng was in charge of the Heaven Rider Palace, he was biased towards his personal disciple in everything, and he appointed people based on nepotism and caused great strife between factions. The originally united Heaven Rider Palace had become a mess since a long time ago. As he looked at this group of people that ruined the atmosphere of the Heaven Rider Palace, Elder Gyue's expression was cold and indifferent as he said indifferently, Zhuqiu Feng, Wu Kuan, Cheng Gaoming, heed my orders. The Heaven Rider Soul Tournament is at hand, and the Palace Master has ordered that no one is allowed to obstruct the Heaven Rider Soul Tournament. Otherwise, you'll be dealt with according to the rules of the palace. After that, Elder Gyue looked at the lead elder. He was a thin, tall, an extremely capable old man. And at this moment, his face was covered in large beads of sweat as he said furiously, "Is the Iron Rules Hall under your command?" "Elder Guyue, the Iron Rules Hall has been merged under my command, and it hasn't been used for a long time." Zhuqiu Feng's expression instantly became extremely embarrassed, and he coughed repeatedly to indicate that he shouldn't speak any further. The Heaven Rider Soul Tournament is at hand, so the Iron Rules Hall has been reactivated. All the systems of the Heaven Rider Palace have been restored to how they were in the past. It's fine for an old man like me, but if you infuriate the Palace Master, then all of you can think about it yourselves. Shut up, shut up. At this moment, the expressions of the 20 top experts had turned ashen, and they didn't dare speak loudly, because Guyue's words were like a mountain that pressed down heavily upon their hearts. After looking around at everyone, there were indeed some who were happy and some who were sad. On the roof, Jun Haoyan and Jin Xinyun were frowning. Just as Jin Xinyun was about to speak, Jun Haoyan gestured for him to keep quiet and said in a deep voice, "Let's go back first." At this moment, the entire place was extremely quiet, and the sound of flapping wings could be heard as the birds flew past. Guyue turned around and flew to Su Yi's side, and his eyes were filled with admiration for Su Yi. "Good lad. You can still remain calm in such a situation and under such a powerful soul force." Su Yi shook his head and smiled bitterly. If it wasn't for the heavenly origin demon soul, he would have died on the spot, and he was in urgent need of treatment right now. Guyue seemed to have seen through Su Yi's injuries and said softly, "Let's go. The Palace Master has already agreed to your request. This little girl's injuries aren't light either. Let's return to Lingyue Peak first." As soon as he finished speaking, a vortex arose beneath Guyue's feet, and a peerlessly powerful wave directly carried Su Yi and Han Yuro towards Lingyue Peak. Instantly, the entire square was in an uproar. There were gloomy gazes in the crowd, and there were all sorts of people who were overjoyed, whereas Zhuqiu Feng, Wu Kuan, and the others were filled with killing intent. Chapter 1600. Above the veil of night, the moonlight was clear. The golden sun from before that was extraordinarily intense had already vanished, and the blood-red clouds cast by the setting sun had transformed into an inky blue color along with the sun and moon. The mountain was covered in fine clouds. This was Su Yi's first night at Heaven Drive Creek. The misty sky was suffused with gentle moonlight, and it passed through the gaps between the trees and formed numerous thick and thin pillars of light that illuminated the distant forest that was covered in mist. As he sat high up and listened to the sound of the mountain breeze, Su Yi finished circulating the Origin Supreme technique, and then he spat out a long mouthful of foul air. The palm strike that Zhuqiu Feng struck him with earlier had almost completely recovered now. Even though it was a soul attack, its formidable force wasn't something that an ordinary cultivator could endure. Whoosh! He withdrew his hand seals, and the energy in his body was suffused within the dense spirit energy of the heavens and the earth, and it instantly drifted far away. On the other hand, the extremely thick and wide divine soul veins within his body were surging with peerless spirit energy, and his void divine ocean was already filled to the brim. As his eyes recovered their clarity, Su Yi couldn't help but be slightly dazed as he gazed at the mountain clouds that suffused the air before him. In the sky, the fragrance of the mountains drifted in spirals, and the halo of light that passed through the leaves was extremely like a peerlessly beautiful celestial shadow. For a time, Su Yi was actually infatuated by it, and it just happened to be like the lonely and elegant shadow within the cave. "Jing where exactly are you?" Su Yi muttered lightly, and it was like a dream. Since she left without saying goodbye that day, Su Yi's heart had always been filled with that graceful figure. When she was by his side, Su Yi always felt that Yin Jing was noisy, and he was annoyed that she was a stupid little girl that didn't know etiquette. Later on, he noticed that Yin Jing was only like Su Yi, whereas towards others or people that she didn't like, she was resolute and merciless, and this gave Su Yi a sense of security and belonging that he hadn't felt for a long time. Su-yi missed her greatly in his heart when she suddenly left. The night sky was dim, and Su-yi's heart instantly seemed to have sunk to the bottom of the valley. Is this the feeling of having someone in your heart? Having lived 2 lives, Su-yi's temperament had become even more tenacious. However, when love was at stake, even heroes would feel sad. Regardless of whether it was Lu Ruoxi or Ling Qinxue, none of them could replace Yunjing. Lu Ruoxi was the love of Su-yi when he was young. Ling Qinxue was the companion of Su-yi when he was mature, and Yunjing was the romantic partner of Su-yi when he was in love for the first time. Every one of them was sincere and beautiful, leaving an indelible mark in Su-yi's heart. Could it be that he and Yunjing were destined to be people from 2 different worlds? What Su-yi didn't understand was then, what was that dream? Bye-bye. Su-yi didn't notice that in the forest far away from Heavenly Drive Creek, there was also a beautiful figure in the depths of the forest, moving agilely and drifting far away. I see that sect master Su has something on his mind. An old voice faintly came from behind. Old man Guyue's footsteps were steady like that of an immortal. In just a moment, he had arrived beside Su-yi. The night wind blew up old man Guyue's elegant silver hair. His hale and hearty eyes revealed a profound and mysterious aura, as if he had seen through the vicissitudes of life. He was like a 1,000-year-old ancient well, quiet and distant. Senior Guyue, I've troubled you again today. Su-yi sighed softly. Old man Guyue stared at the distant sky without blinking. He stroked his beard and said, "Between you and me, calling it trouble is treating me as an outsider. Just like this moonlight that can overturn the sky. Can you stop it from shining just because you hate it?" Senior's meaning is? Su-yi seemed to have understood something. Never doubt your own choice. This old man knows that you have a lot of secrets, but it is because of these secrets that you are now. Since you have stepped onto this path, work hard to walk down it. Forward is a cliff, backward is a valley. You should soar into the sky and amaze the world with a single cry. Boom! Su-yi's heart trembled as he felt enlightened. He then stood up solemnly and bowed to old man Guyue. I've learned, even if the king of hell is in charge, I must still kill the gods. Whether it was Yunjing, the upcoming Heavenly Drive Soul competition, or the Heavenly Wind ranking competition, since he had made his choice, he couldn't regret it. Since he had made his choice, he had to walk down it bravely. If he missed Yunjing, he had to work hard to find her. If he wanted to flatten the holy mountain, he had to cultivate diligently without any distractions. One day, he would be able to reach the peak of the martial path and become the ruler of all time. Su-yi looked at the scenery in front of him and suddenly felt his heart expand. He didn't feel as sluggish as before, and his heroic spirit erupted like a volcano. Sect Master Su, for you to be able to have such achievements, you must have experienced unimaginable hardships. You must have had a fortuitous encounter that others would never have in their lifetime. This old man is clear in his heart, but there are some things that are better to be clear about. Old man Guyue stroked his beard lightly and said, Senior, what are you referring to? I don't care where your art of driving the heavens came from, but since the palace master has agreed to let you participate, she must have her own reasons. I hope that you can tell me the truth when the time comes. Don't make things difficult for this old man. It's just that. Su-yi was in a difficult position. If the Heavenly Drive Palace was harmless to the senior in danger, Su-yi would naturally tell him everything. As if he could see Su-yi's hesitation, Old man Guyue continued, the Heavenly Drive Palace is named after driving the heavens, which means that this technique existed when the palace was built. It's not orthodox, but I believe that Sect Master Su will be able to tell. Senior Guyue, then do you have any experts from the Heavenly Drive Palace who are wandering outside? Su-yi asked tentatively. Then I'll let the palace master talk to you in detail. Guyue's calm face flashed with a trace of undetectable surprise, but it was quickly concealed. I wonder when the Heavenly Drive Soul competition will start. Su-yi was filled with curiosity about the upcoming Heavenly Drive Soul competition, so he asked softly. Old man Guyue laughed and said faintly, You're finally concerned about the Heavenly Drive Soul competition. It will officially start 3 days later, and it will still be held at the peak before the earthquake. What's the result of Ran and Chu's test? Su-yi recalled that old man Gyue took them to test the quality of their souls and asked immediately. Old man Gyue was extremely satisfied at the mention of the two Li family disciples, and he nodded slightly. These two children have extremely high comprehension abilities, and their talents are even more outstanding. Of the siblings, Ran has a half-step heavenly soul, and Chu has a heavenly soul. The Li family disciples live up to their reputation. They're really talented children. Su-yi couldn't help but be overjoyed. Sure enough, it was exactly as he had guessed. His eyes were filled with surprise as he continued. Then, can the two of them become heavenly drive soul masters? Gyue shook his head and said softly, although a half-step heavenly soul can also become a heavenly drive soul master, compared to Chu, Ran obviously expends more energy on the path of a heavenly drive soul master. On the path of cultivation, the most important thing is to concentrate and not look left and right. Fortunately, Ran has the foundation of martial arts, and she has the fire and wood attributes. This old man recommends that she become an alchemist. If she works hard on cultivation, she can also become famous in the world and become a pill god in the future. Chapter 16:01. Hearing this, Su-yi couldn't help but nod. He couldn't help but feel happy. This was definitely the best ending for the siblings. It was enough to comfort the ancestors of the Li family. Li Ran was gentle and kind by nature. She devoted herself to cultivating pill recipes and healing the world. It was the best for Li Ran to achieve the Bodhi Bright Mirror Heart. As for Chu, he had such a tenacious character and willpower at such a young age. As long as he cultivated patiently and studied hard in the Heavenly Palace, he would definitely become a powerful, soul-controlling master with his comprehension ability and revive the Leaf family. There was hope in front of him. Good. This result couldn't be better. However, I have a presumptuous request. Su-yi was a little embarrassed. This time, he came in to bring the Li siblings to be apprenticed to the Yuqian Palace. But unfortunately, after going through a lot of twists and turns, he offended all the people he should offend. Even if the palace master didn't blame him, it would be difficult to find a master who would dare to accept them. These two children are simple and kind by nature. If you didn't bring them here, I'm afraid I wouldn't have met them. This is fate. I'm willing to accept them as my disciples. Elder Guyue's eyes contained deep meaning. As soon as he finished speaking, Su-yi's eyes lit up. He was pleasantly surprised, and his starry eyes were full of gratitude. In the 6 continents, 3 continents, and 1 sea, Elder Gyue was also a peerless expert of the soul controller lineage. To be able to be apprenticed to him, the Li siblings were really lucky. Speaking of which, you're also very strange. You didn't join the Yuqian Palace, but you stuffed them in. What do you think? Have you changed your mind now? Su-yi smiled embarrassedly and shook his head slightly. He said apologetically, I'm used to wandering around the world. The responsibility of the Yuqian Palace is too great. I'm afraid I can't adapt. Gyue rolled his eyes at Su-yi. His kind and amiable face was full of smiles. He knew that he couldn't persuade Su-yi, but there was someone who could. Gyue believed that Su-yi would have a new idea at that time. Let's go. Go take a look at my 2 good disciples. While we're at it, let's talk about the Heavenly Soul Competition. With light steps, Su-yi followed Old Man Gyue to the main hall. The simple and unadorned house was brightly lit. The Li siblings had been waiting in the house for a long time. When they saw Su-yi, they immediately went up to greet him. They chattered excitedly with their faces flushed red. All right, Senior Gyue has already told me about you two. Now listen to me. I have something that will affect your entire lives. Su-yi said mysteriously. Her eyes were full of smiles. Li Ran and Chu were both startled. They had just entered Yuqian Palace. How could it be related to marriage? Chu scratched her head and said with a chuckle, Brother Su, did you take a fancy to a girl? I still want to become a soul controller, so I have to clear my heart and restrain my desires. Don't mess around. Hearing this, Li Ran couldn't help but smile. She patted Ah Chu and rebuked, "Ah Chu, listen to Brother Su. Don't interrupt." Ah Chu's innocent words made Su, Yi, and Guyue laugh. Then, Su, Yi conveyed to them that Guyue intended to accept disciples. The two of them were stunned on the spot. Li Shiran's eyes were already filled with tears, while Ah Chu was so excited that she couldn't speak. Her eyes were wide open. Su, Yi gently shook in front of her and said, "Hey, Ah Chu, what's wrong with you? Are you too happy to speak?" Su, Yi said with a smile. Plop. Li Ran and Ah Chu knelt on the ground at the same time. No matter how Su, Yi pulled them, they couldn't get up. Guyue shook his head gently behind them and said, "Sect Master Su, this is the goodwill of the two children. It's not good if you refuse." Su, Yi sighed helplessly and said faintly, "You don't have to do this. We've helped each other, and I've also received a lot of benefits from your family." Bang, bang, bang. The siblings first kowtowed 3 times to old man Guyue to thank him for his kindness. She then kowtowed to Su, Yi a few more times, her eyes glistening with tears. Li Ran sobbed, "Big brother Su, the two of us really can't repay your kindness. You're not only the fated person of the Li family, but also our great benefactor." "Ha ha!" Old man Guyue raised his eyes and walked to Li Ran. He said to the two, "Why can't you repay it? You can repay your kindness in the Heavenly Soul Competition." Ah Chu's tears stained his clothes as he said in a sobbing voice, Master, but we've just entered the sect and have little experience. How can we help Brother Su?" Guyue slowly helped the two of them up and comforted Li Ran, who was still crying. He gestured for the two of them to sit down. Then, he began to speak slowly with a solemn expression. The Heavenly Soul Competition is divided into 4 categories: martial arts cultivation, alchemy, weapon forging, and soul mastery. They correspond to the 4 schools of martial arts, alchemy, weapon forging, and soul mastery, respectively. Since ancient times, alchemy, weapon forging, and soul mastery are poles apart. Those who can master both are blessed by the heavens. Your brother Su's eldest brother is an outstanding talent. Brother Wu Qing. Su Yi suddenly thought of the drunken but extremely talented Merciless West, whose name had shaken the Chaos region for a long time. Ran, focus on alchemy in the future and you'll definitely achieve something. Changchu's soul quality is excellent, and his soul mastery will definitely be carried forward. In this soul mastery competition, Ran, you'll participate in the alchemy competition, and Ah Chu will participate in the soul mastery competition. Hearing this, Su Yi frowned and said anxiously, "Senior, soul quality isn't equal to combat power. The two of them have just stepped out. How can they win the competition?" Immediately, old man Guyue gave Su Yi a look of approval and nodded. "Although that's the case, do you remember what I told you before? In order to be fair, the 10 vassals will sponsor people to make up for the weak teams?" "I remember. Is it about soul quality?" Su Yi was suddenly enlightened. Everyone had a different soul quality. Some might have a half-step heaven-rank soul, while others might have a heaven-rank soul. If they were both at the beginning of rank 4, they might be at a disadvantage because of their innate soul quality. In this way, it would be hard to tell how much progress the elder and the student had made within 3 years. The biggest purpose of the Heavenly Soul Competition was to smooth out the innate advantages as much as possible and to test the effort of each disciple and the teaching results of the Heavenly Soul Palace. The difference between soul energy and vitality energy was that soul energy could be superimposed under the activation of the Heavenly Soul Art. This was also the reason why the Heavenly Soul Competition was a team competition. Guyue had a benevolent look on his face as he softly chuckled. Every team is made up of 5 people. Aside from martial cultivation, every single event has 3 participants, with one of them being the main contestant. Therefore, the arrangement of the teams is extremely particular. Please remember the domain name of this book, .com, Wonderful Book House. Com. Chapter 1602. Gyue gently patted Su Yi's shoulder and said with a smile, "Since the palace master wants you to participate, I'm afraid no one will object to you being the main force. Li Shiran and Ah Chu are only contributing their soul quality." After hearing this, Su Yi immediately relaxed a lot. Li Shiran and Ah Chu's expressions eased a lot as they gradually gained confidence. Su Yi continued, "In that case, as long as we gather the highest soul quality and have one person as the main force, we will have a great chance of winning in alchemy and soul control." Elder nodded gently and looked at the three of them with eyes full of trust. Soul control mainly depends on Sect Master Su. As long as we can provide comparable medicinal materials and utensils for alchemy and weapon refining, it will be fine. Therefore, in addition to having a high soul quality, the strength of the soul and the quality of the materials and utensils are also the key. Elder Gyue said slowly, "The direct disciples of the Imperial Palace must have heaven-grade souls, but not every team will have heaven-grade souls. Therefore, with 4 heaven-grade souls and a person with high soul combat power, we will have the upper hand." Su Yi nodded heavily. Under the dim light, his face suddenly became determined. Thinking about it carefully, he would definitely be able to get first place in martial arts. He already had candidates for alchemy and soul control. However, he didn't have a suitable candidate for the path of weapon forging. A weapon forging master needed to have fire and metal attributes, which was more difficult to find. Elder Gyue, who will participate in the weapon refining. Tian will take up the role. I owe him too much over the years. He has dual talents in alchemy and weapon refining, but he is willing to run around for me. His cultivation has been delayed a lot. Suddenly, everyone present, including Su Yi, was shocked. There were not many merciless West people with dual identities in the world. Tian Wu was an alchemist and a weapon refiner at the same time, which meant that he must have 3 attributes. In the eyes of outsiders, he was a loser with mixed vitality, but in the eyes of cultivators, he was an excellent talent. In fact, it was the best combination of vital energy. In addition, the Tian Wu had a heaven-grade soul. He should have been a respected double prime, but now, even Ji Fei Bao was not as good as him. There's actually such a miraculous physique in this world. So he couldn't help but sigh. When I found Tian Ho back then, I was also very surprised. After so many years, his current height has a lot to do with me. Old Gyue looked a little lonely when he mentioned Tian Ho. Creak. As he said this, Tian Ho and Han Yuro walked in together. Although Tian Ho was seriously injured, he was more or less fine under Old Man Gyue's careful treatment. Tian Ho's face was full of unswerving determination as he looked at Gyue. "Master, please don't say that. Your disciple is willing to share the burden of the Imperial Heavenly Palace for you all these years. The path of cultivation is not only the cultivation of external objects, but also the cultivation of the heart." In Gyue's yellowed eyes, Tian Ho's figure gradually became clearer, and a feeling of wetness welled up. "Good. It's really a blessing for me to have such a disciple. In this soul competition, I will definitely help you obtain benefits and soar in one fell swoop." Su Yi, who was standing at the side, also looked at Tian Ho in a new light. His initial indifference was no longer as annoying as before. "Brother Tian Chong, congratulations on having a good junior brother and junior sister." Tian Ho came back to his senses and looked at Li Shiran and Ah Chu. Both of them were slightly shy. Old Man Gyue stroked his beard and smiled, nodding his head in agreement. Hearing this, Tian Chong was full of excitement. He rubbed his hands and said, "That's great. With such help, and Sect Master Su, we will definitely succeed." Han Yuro, who was standing at the side, had skin whiter than snow. She had not completely recovered from Wu Kuin's soul attack. Her face was pale, and her eyes were slightly misty. She looked at Su Yi with a pleading gaze. "Are you feeling better? You should lie down a little more." Han Yuro shook her head stubbornly. Her eyes flashed with determination. She said slowly, "Su Yi, I also want to participate in the soul competition. But you're already like this. Must you participate?" Su Yi was still a little worried. He did not know why Han Yuro had to participate. Miss, are you the beloved daughter of the boundless sect master, Han Yuro? Gyue looked at Han Yuro carefully. He was confused and asked softly. Han Yuro's moon-like eyes flashed with surprise. She said softly, Senior knows me. Ha ha ha. Old man Gyue laughed and said, Your father and I could be considered old acquaintances. His precious daughter has come to visit. I apologize for not going out to welcome you. Everyone knew that the boundless sect was a terrifying monster like the Sacred Mountain. However, the difference was that the boundless sect was a direct lineage. The sect master's son was very likely to be the next pillar of the sect. The Sacred Mountain was a direct lineage. Below the holy venerate level were the holy sons and holy daughters. When old man Gyue was treating Han Yuro's injuries, he felt that the aura on her body was familiar. That was why he said that. You're the daughter of the boundless sect master. So he couldn't help but look at Han Yuro. I didn't tell you beforehand. I'm sorry. Suddenly, Han Yuro's bright eyes and white teeth showed a trace of embarrassment. Miss Han is also a heaven-tier soul controller from the Soul Competition Palace. Sect Master Su, Miss Han is the most suitable candidate for the final competition. Really? Su Yi and Han Yuro looked at old man Gyue at the same time. However, they each had their own thoughts. Han Yuro's radiant face was full of surprise, while Su Yi's brows were tightly furrowed. But Miss Han's soul is damaged. Su Yi felt that it would be more appropriate to find another heaven-tier soul controller. Suddenly, Han Yuro tugged on Su Yi's clothes. She looked very anxious. She said weakly, No, I can do it. Don't we still have 3 days? I can do it. Are you sure? Su Yi's brows were still furrowed with worry. Han Yuro nodded heavily. That's it then. I promise I won't hold you back. Tianwu, Yumi, Shiran, and Achu. The 5 of us will represent Lingyue Peak. Looking at the 5 of them, Gyue was very satisfied with each of them. He couldn't help but nod and smile. Looks like Lingyue Peak is going to be in the limelight this year. Ha ha ha. Sect Master Su, this old man has something to tell you. Come here for a moment. After hearing this, Su Yi's heart skipped a beat. Under everyone's gaze, the 2 of them walked to the side. Su Yi said respectfully, Senior, is there something important? The Palace Master has ordered that your results must be excellent this time. Otherwise, you, Shiran, and Achu's lives will be in danger. What? Su Yi's eyes were ablaze with anger as he yelled, scaring the 4 people behind him. Please remember the domain name of this book.com, Wonderful Book House. Chapter 1603. When Su Yi heard this, he wondered which old man was spouting such nonsense. He lowered his voice and said, What kind of logic is this? Besides, what is outstanding? Senior, please enlighten me. Sigh. Elder Gyue shook his head slightly and said, The Palace Master has always been temperamental. This is not an exaggeration. As I said before, as long as you make the Palace Master happy, everything will be fine. But if you make the Palace Master unhappy, he will chase after you no matter where you go. After saying this, Elder Gyue paused for a moment before continuing in a low voice. Many years ago, there was a big shot in the palace who dominated the Imperial Palace. He only won first place in 2 of the Imperial Soul competition. That alone is enough to look down on the entire Imperial Palace. Since Sect Master Su has decided to participate in all 4 competitions, you must win at least 2 first places. Creak. Hearing this, Su, he couldn't help but clench his fists tightly. His eyes were full of fighting spirit and exuberant fighting spirit. He gritted his teeth and said, Not just 2 first places. I want all 4 first places. This nuisance of a palace master. I will teach you a lesson today. The whereabouts of his Su family members were still unknown. He didn't even know if they were with the palace master, but this bullshit palace master was starting to threaten him. For the lives of Shiran and Achu, Su, you would fight this as a tough battle. Good. Try your best to fight for it. In the remaining 3 days, I will let Tian Ho train Shiran and Achu. You and Miss Han should try your best to improve your soul strength in Lingua Peak. Fight more battles and experience the existence of the soul. Okay, Su Yi and the others answered. Then, Elder Gyue explained the details of each competition to them in detail, as well as some common methods of soul manipulation. Then, they returned to their rooms. In the antique room, Su Yi sat on the bed and began to meditate, adjusting his breath and cultivating the art of imperial soul manipulation. This was the first time that Su Yi had focused on cultivating the art of driving the heavens. While chatting with old man Gyue, Su Yi realized that his understanding of the soul was too narrow. The wonders of the soul were endless, and the seniors in the Cliff Valley did not have much time to teach him. Su Yi gradually entered a state of calmness and concentration. He sensed the location of the soul and the existence of the Yuan Qi around him. The soul was also a form of existence of energy, and it was interconnected with the Yuan Qi method. Su Yi gradually entered a state of epiphany. His aura was calm and natural, like an old monk in meditation. His body rippled with a dense divine radiance, and his aura rose unceasingly, as if it had transcended the heavens and the earth. As the radiance surged, numerous mysterious runes floated into the air like coiling little snakes. They came out from the top of his head, and they were profound, unfathomable, and incomparably wonderful. Boom, boom! Wave after wave of aura gushed out of his body like a river, pushing towards the sky. The energy fluctuations could be felt even outside the room. Su Yi, Han Yuro, Li Shiran, and Ah Chu lived in a small courtyard. The courtyard was not big, but it was simple and clean. The moonlight poured down and covered the stone platform with a silvery white mist. Sigh, I don't know if I made the right choice in coming to the palace of driving the heavens this time. Father has always been worried about the headquarters of the palace of driving the heavens. I want to show these stubborn old fogies who cultivate their strength and let them know that the immeasurable sect is still the boss of the cloud region. Don't come straight to the palace of driving the heavens whenever you come to the cloud region. So, I must get first place. Han Yuro rested her chin on her hand and looked at the distant moon scraping against the ink plate. She felt the fluctuations coming from Su Yi's room one after another. This guy is still cultivating at this late hour? Should I go and discuss the details of the competition with him? The night was easy to let one's imagination run wild. Han Yuro pursed her cherry lips tightly. A few patches of red flew out from her snow-white skin. She stood up and then fell down. Han Yuro was in a dilemma. She went to Su Yi's door several times and went back to the center of the courtyard several times. Han Yuro scolded herself. Han Yuro, oh Han Yuro, when did you become so wishy-washy? You are a hot-blooded, good daughter. It was really outrageous for her to be so coy. No wonder Father always said you are immature. Huff! Han Yuro jumped on the spot and did some warm-up exercises. She took a few deep breaths and rushed to Su Yi's room. Her snow-white hand gently rested on the door. In the end, she decided to put it down. Her face twisted together as she knocked on her head lightly and stomped her feet. Ayaya, go back, go back. You're really a pig. Whoosh! At this moment, a rustling sound came from the forest in the distance. It startled the birds and a low roar of the savage beasts. The roar spread far and wide. Who is it? Han Yuro frowned. She immediately spread out her spiritual senses to sense the aura in the distance. After a while, she did not feel any movement. Han Yuro lifted her hand and rubbed the back of her head. She said doubtfully, "Did I sense wrongly? Sigh, I better go back and rest." After Han Yuro left, a beautiful green figure flashed out from the forest. Her cherry lips opened slightly, and a voice that sounded like a warbler's song came out slowly. "Brat, you are living a happy life without me. Women can't stop." Whoosh! The beautiful figure in the forest sighed softly in the darkness. Then, she pointed at the void, and the sparse figure disappeared. "Xiaomu, let's go." Rumble. Then, a green flowing light flew away. The whole Lingua Peak returned to its tranquility. It slowly passed by. Among the clouds condensed by spiritual chi, it looked like a fairy was dancing. At dawn, the morning sun shone its light on Gonke Lake. In a moment when the breeze blew, the fine pieces of gold in the lake were like little fish that rushed out of the lake. They rolled and surged, sparkling and shining. The overflowing golden light shone on the back of Lingyue Peak. The warm light accompanied the blue sky, ushering in another morning of Tianyuan. Su Yi gently pushed open the door. After a night of meditation, his body's condition was already at its best. His meridians were filled with spiritual energy that surged like a dragon. Su Yi looked inside his soul. In his divine spiritual meridians, the second hidden latch of yin and yang was surging. It was very harmonious. The iron soulfish's body was constantly emitting dark and deep light. While he was so busy, the iron soulfish was sleeping soundly without any worries. He immediately shouted, "Time to get up. Don't bother me. I'm exhausted. Let me ask you, did you use your soul energy yesterday?" "Yes, why?" Su Yi couldn't help but ask. Yesterday's mountain guarding formation was a bit strange. It actually attracted your second hidden latch. Otherwise, even if you have a heaven rank soul, how could you draw out such a powerful formation? The iron soulfish said in a deep voice. The second hidden latch was formed by the fusion of Su Yi's crimson water crystal and the iron soulfish. It was located in the divine spiritual meridians. Chapter 1604. All this time, Su Yi hadn't felt anything strange, but after hearing the iron soulfish's explanation, he realized that the entrance and the grand formation were mysteriously connected. This is the product of the fusion of a god and a devil. Could it be that the imperial palace's grand formation is also this mysterious? Suddenly, Su Yi recalled yesterday's vision. The surge of yin and yang brought him great pleasure without the slightest hindrance. It was indeed unusual. Now that you think about it, it makes sense. Where's this place? If you have time today, go check it out. The iron soulfish's eyelids drooped as if he was about to fall asleep again. All right, with my half-step heaven rank command medallion, the imperial palace shouldn't be able to stop me. I'll go take a look at the front peak. Su Yi raised his eyebrows, full of determination. Yesterday, Elder Gyue told him that cultivation wasn't something that could be done overnight. Therefore, as long as he had a good rest, he would be able to exert his full strength when the time came. In alchemy and tool refining, not only did the quality of the ingredients matter, but the hardness of the fire cauldron was also important. Su Yi didn't lack ingredients. The 100 Herb Mountain's accumulation was enough for Su Yi's needs. In addition to the items plundered by the 100 Herb Mountain's disciples, it wasn't a difficult task. The Imperial Palace was also very rich in resources. If worst came to worst, he could just go and pick some. However, Su Yi was a bit worried about the fire cauldron. The fire cauldron could be used for alchemy or tool refining. However, there were some special grade cauldrons that specialized in alchemy or tool refining. The purple flame yang cauldron he obtained from the 100 Herb Mountain was a Dao cauldron that specialized in alchemy. The azure flame yin cauldron was a Dao cauldron that specialized in tool refining. Unfortunately, Yunjing left in a hurry, and the purple flame yang cauldron went with her. Su Yi sighed. If he had the purple flame yang cauldron now, he would have an 80% chance of success in alchemy. Immediately, Su Yi activated the Origin Supreme Art. Qi energy erupted from his body as he looked inside his entryway. The iron soulfish had already fallen asleep due to exhaustion. Inside, the heavenly origin demon soul, Ling Qianxue was still refining Ling Lanin's spiritual cat blood essence. She did not have any reaction and left quietly. It's really not good to have no one to advise me. I'd better go to the front peak of the earthquake and find the answer myself. There were only 3 days left. Su Yi understood that Gyue and Tian Wu would focus on the special training of Li Shiran and Ah Chu. He and Han Yuro had to seize every opportunity to practice and prepare for the competition. Su Yi had heard from Tian Wu that the Heavenly Martial Chamber, Heavenly Elixir Chamber, Heavenly Soul Chamber, and Heavenly Artifact Chamber which were related to the lifeline of the imperial palace, were all at the peak before the earthquake. Immediately, he stepped out with the Fuyao 100 transformation steps. Just as he was about to move forward, Han Yuro pushed the door open and came out. She was in a good mood when she saw Su-yi. She asked, "Where are you going?" Su-yi looked at Han Yuro, and a smile gradually appeared at the corner of his mouth. The Juqian Palace's collection of books was far greater than the Juqian Palace of the Central State. With Han Yuro here, one more person was one more helper. Boom! Suddenly, Su-yi stepped out with the Fuyao 100 transformation steps. Behind him, his wings were flowing with colorful lights. He turned into a ball of fire in the air and flew toward the front peak of the earthquake. Golden light filled the air. Chuchin's Heavenly Drive Creek's aura was majestic and magnificent. Between heaven and earth, there was a vast and mighty spiritual aura. The sound of something breaking through the air shook the front peak, and the figures of Su-yi and Han Yuro appeared once again. Looking around the square, because yesterday was the elders' regular meeting, there were many more people in the square today. And today, the square's array did not have the same strange feeling as yesterday. It was probably strengthened by the experts. Su-yi pondered in his heart. First, he would go to the Heavenly Dan Pavilion to look for the Dan recipe. Between the high buildings, the glazed tiles were colorful. On the tiles, the figures of the Imperial Palace's disciples could be seen everywhere, shuttling back and forth. The Heaven's Desire competition was imminent, and everyone was actively preparing. Among them, Su-yi and Han Yuro's clothes were very different. They seemed out of place in the middle of the earthquake square. When the passers-by saw Su-yi and Han Yuro, they all avoided their eyes and whispered. Even on the top of the tall buildings, Su-yi could feel several cold gazes on him. Exclamations, taunts, and discussions filled the sky. "Do you see that? That's Su-yi. You don't say, he's quite handsome. The girl beside him is also very beautiful." A few female disciples chatted and laughed. Humph, swaggering, and daring to bring a little girl to the middle of the earthquake square. How arrogant! Who asked him to be a talent personally appointed by the palace lord? I heard that yesterday, Elder Gyue fought against 3 vice palace lords for him. Do you have the ability to do so? Whether or not I have the ability, I still have to show my true strength. I hope I don't meet him in the Imperial Soul competition. Otherwise, I will definitely beat him out of the Imperial Palace. A few male disciples looked at Su-yi with jealousy. Their harsh words were carried by the wind into the ears of Su-yi and Han Yuro. Suddenly, Han Yuro's eyes were filled with displeasure. She glared at the high platform and snorted coldly. The people of Imperial Palace also like to gossip. The crows in the world are all black. It's the same no matter where they go. If he says another word, I will tear his stinky mouth. Su-yi laughed softly. He waved his hand and said, "When others talk about us, it shows that we are powerful. When the time comes, we will slap their faces hard in the Imperial Soul competition." Softly comforting Han Yuro not to take it to heart, Su-yi pulled Han Yuro to the heavenly elixir chamber. Su-yi said softly, "Let's go and see what the Imperial Palace has prepared for the Imperial Soul competition." At this time, a few disciples hidden in the crowd said with cold faces, "Let's go. Quickly inform eldest senior brother and senior brother Qianyan that Su-yi is here to prepare for the Imperial Soul competition." Whoosh, whoosh. On the bustling Zhongzhen Square, a few figures disappeared from the crowd in a single file, turning into a few phantoms in the sky. In less than a quarter of an hour, Su-yi and Han Yuro came to a small pavilion with the words Heavenly Elixir Chamber written in an ancient style. Before they reached the door, Su-yi felt a thick and dense elixir qi. It was as if the energy had been settled for thousands of years, like waves, surging to the surroundings. Along with the spiritual qi of heaven and earth, the elixir qi was like a small snake that constantly drilled into the meridians of the passers-by. Su-yi and Han Yuro's eyes suddenly lit up. A warm current surged through their meridians, and it was extremely comfortable. Why is the elixir qi here so strong? Could it be that the elixir chi was not stored well and leaked? Han Yuro couldn't help but wonder. Su-yi closed his eyes and suddenly activated the Imperial Soul Art. His powerful spiritual sense spread out and merged with the rich spiritual chi of heaven and earth. The corner of his mouth slightly curved, and he said, "It's not leaking, it's just that the spiritual chi here is overflowing." Chapter 16:05. Han Yuro was extremely excited. Su-yi noticed that Han Yuro took out her Heaven Tier badge and waved it around. The difference between it and Su-yi's half-step Heaven Tier badge was that the 7 arcs of lightning were the same intensity. The badge was entirely golden and looked very impressive. How did you get a Heaven Tier badge? Even the Imperial Palace only has half-step Heaven Tier badges. Su-yi asked. Han Yuro didn't think so. She curled her lips and looked at the badge in her hand. "When I was young, my father brought me here to be tested. He gave it to me then." Su-yi nodded slightly. It seemed that he had to find some time to do the soul quality test. Right now, entering the Heavenly Pill Pavilion was the most important thing. Bang, bang. Su-yi knocked on the door. No one responded for a long time. Han Yuro crossed her arms and asked, "The Imperial Soul Competition is coming soon. It can't be that it's not open, right?" Shaking his head, it was impossible. The more important it was, the more it should be open. Su-yi knocked again and said, "A Heaven Tier Soul Engineer is here to inquire about the Heavenly Pill Pavilion. Please open the door." With this shout, a lot of people gathered to watch. The people gathered together seemed to have a tacit understanding and didn't say anything as they watched Su-yi knock on the door. There were even some people who were trying hard to hold back their laughter. "What are you laughing at? I'll pull out all your tongues." Han Yuro was annoyed and stared fiercely at the people who were watching with bad intentions. Seeing this scene, Su-yi roughly understood what was going on. His face immediately became gloomy and his eyebrows raised. Looking at the crowd, a boundless killing intent and a fierce aura spread out. Everyone couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. "A bunch of trash. You dare to do it, but don't dare to admit it?" Han Yuro said softly with an ashen face. Su-yi wasn't anxious at all. He leisurely walked to the door of another simple pavilion with the words Heavenly Artifact Pavilion written on it. This was where all the weapons of the Imperial Palace were placed. Normally, the disciples of the Imperial Palace could come and go as they pleased and borrow them for research. Even a Heaven Tier Soul Engineer wouldn't be obstructed. Today, the Heavenly Artifact Pavilion was the same as the Heavenly Pill Pavilion. Both of their doors were tightly shut, and there were no signs of them opening. Damn it, this dog of command Heavenly Palace actually dares to make things difficult for us. Han Yuro was so angry that her teeth turned cold, her beautiful brows tightly knitted together. Poochie! More laughter rang out behind them as more and more people gathered to watch. They were all pointing at Su-yi and Han Yuro. Isn't he just a Heaven Tier Soul Master? Which of the direct disciples of the Imperial Celestial Palace isn't a Heaven Tier Soul Master? He really thinks he's a treasure. Yeah, if you want to show off, go outside. Not just anyone can come to Jutian Palace. Let's not talk about his strength for now. Our eldest senior brother is the best. He's handsome and strong. Su-yi can't compare to him at all. Yes, senior brother Jun Hao-ian. We'll be able to see senior brother Jun Hao-ian soon. The female disciples' faces were flushed red. Normally, they were pure of heart, focused on refining pills, so how could they care about the love in their hearts? Now is a good time to vent. Hearing this, Han Yuro's cold intent spread out. The water attribute energy around her immediately condensed, and her eyes flickered with coldness. Just as she stepped out, she felt Su-yi's robes flutter. Like a flash of fire, he pushed and grabbed at the men in the crowd. So fast, Han Yuro's eyes were filled with surprise. Su-yi's speed was extremely terrifying. Just as he raised his hand, the unparalleled power of the Origin Supreme technique seemed to tear the space in front of him apart. Space rippled, and a claw mark broke through the ripples. In the next moment, the Imperial Celestial Palace disciples fell to the ground in panic. "You guys did this, right?" Su-yi turned around and was already back in front of the Celestial Artifact Pavilion. His cold intent froze as he looked at the Imperial Celestial Palace disciples. Whoosh! The surrounding crowd suddenly quieted down. Suyi's strength and speed far exceeded their expectations. Everyone's expression froze as they looked at Su-yi. They didn't dare to breathe too loudly. Su-yi looked up quietly, his heart sinking. He said, "If you don't want to die, scram." Boom! The timid ones weighed the pros and cons and went elsewhere, no longer caring about what happened here. "Su-yi, what are you doing? What do we do?" The clothes of the captured Yuqian Palace disciple were torn apart. Blue veins popped out on his arm that he had just tried to resist. Blood flowed out from deep wounds. His aura was locked down by Su-yi's powerful energy. His entire body seemed to have frozen. "Are you still asking me? If you don't confess today, no one will leave." Su-yi's expression darkened, the anger in his eyes erupting like a volcano. If he didn't see some blood today, he would be looked down upon. The bound man's face twitched. He looked at the furious Su-yi and laughed dryly. "You're just a heaven-ranked soul master. You want to kill the Imperial Celestial Palace disciples." "Oomph." Su-yi sneered. Silver light flashed from the soles of his feet. With a shake of his body, a giant whirlpool of energy formed and rippled through space. In the air, Su-yi viciously stomped down. No! The man finally realized what a stupid mistake he'd made. Boom! Immediately, the ground in front of Celestial Artifact Pavilion began to crack like a spider web, dozens of feet long. Dust flew everywhere. Su-yi's robe fluttered in the wind as he stared at the crippled Yuqian Palace disciple like a god of death. His domineering and destructive aura spread out, looking down on the firmament. Seeing the power of this move, the spectators all sucked in a breath of cold air. They didn't think that Su-yi would openly use such a ruthless method on Imperial Celestial Palace's land. His killing intent was so thick that it couldn't be dissipated. This kind of fiend was rarely seen in Imperial Celestial Palace in 50 years. Immediately, some disciples in the crowd quickly ran away, not daring to watch. Su-yi looked around at the crowd again. His sharp eyes swept through the air as if he'd discovered something. His eyes trembled as he said, "If you don't come out now, the next thing this person will lose is his hands." Immediately, the crowd cursed Su-yi. "Su-yi, who do you think you are? How dare you behave so atrociously in Imperial Celestial Palace?" As soon as he finished speaking, Su-yi used his palm as a blade and viciously chopped down on the Imperial Celestial Palace disciple's hands. "If you want to die, I won't stop you." The blade light turned into a red lightning bolt that streaked across the air. Suddenly, a wind blade appeared and blocked the spirit blade. Bang bang! The huge sonic boom, caused by the collision of the two, made everyone cover their ears. They all retreated to avoid the attack of the energy. In the next moment, a terrifying ring-shaped wind was generated in the air. With the two of them as the center point, it swept out like a storm, causing the entire space to tremble. Chapter 1606. Su-yi used all of his strength in this move. Su-yi blocked the powerful force with his body, but the unparalleled blade light still swept towards the arm of the disciple. Crack! The crisp sound of bones breaking resounded outside the Celestial Artifact Pavilion. The disciple, who no longer felt pain, could only groan in pain. "Senior Brother Chinyan, save me, save me." The disciple, whose hands and feet had been crippled, was now lying on the ground like a pile of mud, staring at a figure in the crowd. "Su-yi, how dare you?" The voice and the wind blade just now were all from this figure in the crowd. The crowd immediately retreated, leaving only two people standing in front of the Celestial Artifact Pavilion. The person with the murderous intent and angry eyebrows was the second disciple of the Celestial Artifact Palace, Jin Xinyun. He was 25 or 26 years old. When the crowd saw that Jin Xinyun and Su-yi were facing each other, they couldn't help but feel hopeful. "Su-yi, how dare you injure the disciple of the Celestial Artifact Palace?" Don't think that you can kill as you wish here, just because Elder Guyue is protecting you. Jin Xinyun's cultivation as a beginner 4th-rank soul controller suddenly spread out. Instantly, a huge pressure enveloped the void above. I know this person. He's the 2nd disciple of the Celestial Artifact Palace, Jin Xinyun. He's harder to deal with than Ji Fei Bao. There's also Jun Haoyan, who is very popular among the disciples. I think it's related to him. Han Yuro stood behind Su Yi and raised her eyebrows. Su Yi looked at Jin Xinyun. Jin Xinyun was wearing a long robe, but he didn't seem to be affected by the soaring force at all. Unknowingly, a powerful force field attracted everyone's attention. He thought to himself that Jin Xinyun was indeed much stronger than Ji Fei Bao. This soul power was enough to fight. Immediately, Su Yi activated the art of driving the celestial artifact and the Origin Supreme technique at the same time. After removing Jin Xinyun's pressure, a wave of soul power surged out from his body again. A ray of light suddenly burst out from his eyes. Boom! Jin Xinyun knew how powerful Su Yi was, and he reacted in an instant. Facing Su Yi's ferocious aura, Jin Xinyun turned into a blurry shadow and retreated, at the same time forming hand seals to resist. Do I know you? Where did you run out from? Su Yi was calm and collected as he said indifferently. The contest between Faded Cloud Breeze and Su Yi had caused Jin Xinyun's heart to shudder. Now that he had been severely neglected by Su Yi, Jin Xinyun's face burned with embarrassment. He shouted angrily, "You arrogant little thief! I know you. Since you have injured one of our disciples, the elders can let you go. However, if you want to enter the Heavenly Elixir Pavilion and the Heavenly Artifact Pavilion, you have to get permission from our disciples." Yes. We don't even have enough books for ourselves. How can we accommodate outsiders? Senior Brother Jin is right. The Imperial Palace's collection is not for outsiders. Su Yi sneered in his heart. This was the quality of the Imperial Palace's disciples. Following the crowd blindly, he said coldly, "Did Jun Haoyan make you do this?" Jin Xinyun's expression changed slightly, and his soul energy surged again. Suppressing the anger in his heart, he snorted and said, "You think you are worthy of Senior Brother Jun's help? Don't flatter yourself." Hearing this, Su Yi was not anxious or angry. He looked coldly at Jin Xinyun and said, "Since that is the case, then it is between the two of us. If I beat you, don't try to stop me from entering the pavilion." Jin Xinyun already knew about Su Yi's strength from the previous contest. Moreover, Su Yi's name was like thunder to the ears. How could the 2nd disciple of the Imperial Palace not know? He originally wanted to make things difficult for Su Yi, but now he could not back down. Senior Brother Jin, compete with him. The disciples of the Imperial Palace are not afraid of anyone. Yes, Senior Brother Jin, the Imperial Soul competition is in 2 days. Beat him until he can't compete. Get out of the Imperial Palace. Behind him, there were also some disciples who wanted to watch the show. Jin Xinyun was secretly complaining. It would be good if he won, but if he lost, not only would he lose face, his cultivation might also be crippled. The Imperial Palace's disciple just now was proof. After a while, Han Yuro said with contempt, "Imperial Palace's 2nd senior brother only has this much ability? Trash who only knows how to use dirty tricks. Presumptuous." Being ridiculed by Su Yi was one thing, but Han Yuro's words completely enraged Jin Xinyun. The anger in his heart was like an erupting volcano. He shouted, "Su Yi, I will report the matter of you injuring my Imperial Palace's disciple. You can compete with me if you want. Imperial Palace has its own methods. If we use the Imperial Soul technique together, there will be no regrets." His strength was at the beginning of the 4th rank, which was stronger than Ji Fei Bao's. In terms of soul strength, he was weaker than Su Yi, who was at the beginning of the 3rd rank. "All right." Su Yi smiled faintly. His expression darkened, and the art of controlling the heavens surged around his body. Layer after layer of soul energy spread out from his body, covering the sky and earth. What a powerful soul aura! It is indeed the art of imperial heaven, and you still say you didn't learn it secretly. Jin Qianyun immediately struck out with his palm. Flames flashed from the soles of his feet as he soared into the sky. The ferocious force brought along a faint light arc instantly. The sharp sound of something breaking through the wind echoed in the sky. A whirlpool appeared in front of him. Jin Qianyun summoned a fire-attributed expert who was holding a sky-piercing long saber. It was majestic and was surrounded by flames. Instantly, the surrounding space trembled. It was at the 8th level of the Origin Emperor realm. By hooking a remnant soul, one could hook a demonic beast or even a humanoid expert. Even an ancient remnant soul could be hooked. Good job, Senior Brother Jin. He actually summoned a fire-attributed expert at the 8th level of the Origin Emperor realm. The crowd couldn't help clapping and cheering. The beginning of the 4th rank was at most equivalent to the 4th level of the Origin Emperor realm. Now that there was a difference of 4 ranks, it could be seen that the quality and strength of the soul was extremely powerful. At this moment, Han Yuro's expression changed drastically. Suyi's expression also turned serious. If it was an energy attack, it would take some effort to fight against the 8th level of the Origin Emperor realm. Immediately, he circulated the art of Imperial Heaven with all his might. A water energy whirlpool rose from the soles of his feet. Ice crystals condensed around his body. Ice blue radiance filled the sky. As the energy dissipated, a muffled sound was heard from Su Yi's body. In the blink of an eye, Su Yi disappeared from the space. What a fast movement technique! Han Yuro and Jin Qianyun turned pale with fright. Su Yi's movement technique was unimaginably fast. It was impossible to catch him just by relying on the spiritual consciousness and aura. While Su Yi was circulating at high speed, he held his breath and concentrated. He created a unique environment of the water attribute boundary for himself. Crisp sounds of ice crystals shattering could be heard constantly around him. The space surged as the scorching temperature continued to rise. Ripples were formed in the air, and everyone was sweating profusely. Where is he? Jin Qianyun frowned. The fire-attributed expert in front of him was constantly brandishing the giant saber in his hand as he chased after Su Yi's figure. Streaks of scarlet lightning flames tore through the space, and the oppressive gale caused the space to distort slightly. Chapter 1607. The sky was filled with ice crystals as the heavenly Fey ancient scripture was activated. Su Yi shouted in his heart, "Heaven Origin Demon Soul, activate!" Boom! Immediately, the Heaven Origin Demon Soul in Su Yi's mind was like a radiant sun. Coupled with his ghostly speed, he released his soul energy. The water attribute under his feet surged into a whirlpool, causing the nearby air to whine. Oh, an 8th-level Origin Emperor Mystic Ice Wolf dashed out from the faint spatial ripples. In an instant, the entire space contracted tightly. The overwhelming cold air made the entire world extremely fragile. Bestial roars filled the sky, and its ferocious eyes were terrifying. The Mystic Ice Wolf's hard white fur brazenly clashed with the fire attribute expert's saber light. A glaring light burst out from its mouth, and the fire attribute expert quickly retreated to avoid it. The 5 elements reinforce and restrain each other. Han Yuro immediately understood Su Yi's intention. Su Yi wanted to use the 5 elements restrain to make up for the difference in soul energy. Su Yi calmly felt the boundless flames coming towards him. Faint golden dragon patterns appeared around his body. When their hands made contact, an immense power spread out, causing the entire space to distort. The remnant soul of a barbaric beast was much more ferocious than a human-shaped remnant soul. After the Mystic Ice Wolf succeeded in one move, it spread out its 15-feet-long wings. The wings carried the 10,000-year cold air. With its ferocious speed and heart-piercing wind pressure, it directly pressed the fire attribute expert to the ground. Roar! The ice wolf bared its fangs, and in the blink of an eye, an incomparably ferocious ice force pressed down on the neck of the fire attribute expert the moment it extended its fangs. Immediately, the flame crystals that filled the sky turned into specks of soul energy before disappearing. At the same time, a muffled sound came from the sky. The cold air seemed to pour directly into Jin Xinyun's body. In the air, Jin Xinyun was like a human-shaped bird. He flew back several meters and crashed heavily onto the ground. Jin Xinyun's complexion was deathly pale. A mouthful of fresh blood was spat out from his mouth. He allowed the incomparably powerful cold ice force to wantonly seal his body, but he was unable to break free. As the ground cracked, his entire body became limp and collapsed. At this time, the profound ice wolf had also disappeared. Su Yi withdrew his hand seals, and his breathing was slightly chaotic. Large beads of sweat flowed down from Su Yi's chin. "Win! We won!" The spectators were dumbstruck and incomparably shocked in their hearts. Imperial Celestial Palace's second disciple was defeated, and he was actually defeated so thoroughly. A beginner third-stage martial artist defeated a beginner fourth-stage martial artist with the soul control technique. Crossing a major realm? Everyone was in an uproar. Even the teaching elders on the tall building far away had come out to watch. The way everyone looked at Su Yi immediately became subtle. Looking at the dispirited Jin Xinyun, who was looking at him in disbelief, Su Yi said coldly, "You said that there is no resentment between life and death. You can't blame anyone else." Jin Xinyun's eyes were filled with fear and panic. His meridians and body had already been heavily sealed, and his mouth was full of icicles, making him unable to speak. Woo-woo. Jin Xinyun kept shaking his head, and his panicked appearance was as if he was begging Su Yi to let him go. Seeing this, everyone did not dare to breathe loudly. Su Yi's Yuan Qi battle strength was there for all to see. At this moment, his soul energy had surpassed a major realm, and he had directly defeated the second disciple of Imperial Celestial Palace. Who would dare to go forward and face him? You said it yourself. Go down and find your senior brother Jun. As soon as his voice fell, a fire attribute Yuan Qi light gathered on Su Yi's palm. His aura was monstrous, and an unparalleled energy seemed to cross the heavens and earth. His raised right hand seemed to be making the final judgment. Bang! Jin Xinyun was like an ant on a hot pan, and no matter how he struggled, he could not break free from the ice shackles. The flame was like a dragon, roaring out from Su Yi's palm, cutting through space and creating several spatial ripples. Han Yuro stood to the side, coldly looking at the disciples of Imperial Celestial Palace. Her eyes were slowly filled with disdain. Being stared at by Han Yuro, the surroundings suddenly became silent, and all eyes were focused on Su Yi's palm. Boom! Suddenly, the entire space began to crack, and debris flew everywhere. Su Yi felt a wave of dizziness in his mind, and he thought to himself, "This is an absolute expert." Cloud shadow under his feet used the frost steps, and Su Yi immediately retreated, and after a series of steps, he quickly used the Imperial Celestial art to dissolve the attack. After the dust settled, a figure walked out from the rubble. It was a person in his 50s, and his hair was tied up in high bun. His skin was red, and his spirit was very healthy. It's Elder Tong. The crowd was in an uproar. The battle between Su Yi and Jin Xinyun had actually attracted Elder Tong, one of the 18 strongest elders. Everyone immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Sect Leader Su, you're indeed gifted. After so many years, you're the second person to win against a higher level. Elder Tong was also at the elders' regular meeting yesterday, and Su Yi had naturally seen him before. He asked in a deep voice, "Is there anything I can help you with?" Elder Tong carefully sized up Su Yi. The energy in his body stood up like a whirlpool, and extremely mysterious runes revolved around him. Such a domineering and fierce aura caused Han Yuro's expression to change slightly. Beginner Grade 5. It's not something we can fight against. Intermediate Grade 5 was equivalent to a 5th or 6th level Origin Grandmaster. Soul attacks were different from Origin Chi attacks. Under the oppressive aura, he felt an unprecedented sense of danger. The Heaven Origin Demon Soul in his body was restless, and there was a feeling of expansion, causing his heart to tremble. Elder Tong raised his eyebrows and said in a deep voice, "Young people don't care about the severity of the battle. Life and death battles are common. Qinyun is a rare genius of the Imperial Celestial Palace, and you're also a genius soul controller recognized by the Palace Master. If you're injured, it won't be a good thing for the Imperial Celestial Palace. Why don't you listen to me and let it go? You can still enter the Heavenly Elixir Pavilion and the Heavenly Artifact Pavilion freely. If anyone dares to stop you, I'll be the first to kill them." As soon as he finished speaking, the onlookers couldn't help but be shocked, and their mouths almost fell to the ground. Elder Tong was personally apologizing to Su Yi on behalf of Jin Xinyan. What kind of face was this? Su Yi, who was listening with his head lowered, slowly raised his head. A sharp light flashed in his eyes as he said, "The Imperial Celestial Soul competition is near, but the disciples of the Imperial Celestial Palace are all xenophobic and scheming against each other. It's fine if I don't enter the Heavenly Elixir Pavilion and the Heavenly Artifact Pavilion. If the next time, not only Jin Xinyan, but even Jun Haoyin is here, Su Yi won't show any mercy." After he finished speaking, Su Yi took a step forward. The fire attribute energy in his body revealed a thick and long soul aura, and a terrifying energy wave spread out. Immediately, everyone gasped, and a chill ran down their spines. Su Yi was a man of his words. His words were a slap in the face, and he didn't give Elder Tong any face at all. Chapter 1608. Su Yi's words caused the atmosphere in the surroundings to suddenly freeze, and every single one of them felt uneasy in their hearts. Amidst such an awkward atmosphere, even the air seemed to have stopped moving. This Su Yi didn't give Elder Tong any face at all. Yeah, Elder Tong gave him a way out, yet he tore it down himself. He's too overbearing. Even if his strength is heaven-defying, he won't be able to stay in the Heavenly Drive Palace for long if he doesn't give face like this. A trace of imperceptible killing intent surged onto Elder Tong's sharp and aged face, and the corners of his mouth twitched as he said in a low voice, "Since Sect Master Su doesn't fancy the collection of the Heavenly Drive Palace, then we'll wait and see Sect Master Su's outstanding performance in the Heavenly Drive Soul Competition." Su Yi didn't answer while the aura of the Chaotic Supreme Technique suddenly surged around him. He glanced at the surroundings while a peerless and brilliant pressure pressed down like a wave, causing the spectators in the surroundings to be unable to help but gasp in their hearts. Under the gazes of everyone present, Su Yi held Han Yuro's hand as he stepped on flowing lights and drew out a long arc in the sky as he tore through the sky. As they flew through the sky, Han Yuro's eyes narrowed slightly while her crescent brows knit together tightly, and she said with surprise, "Damn it, this Elder Tong is clearly from Zhuqiu Feng's faction. He wasn't pleading for you. He was clearly pressuring you. What a nice way to put it. How sanctimonious. But this old fellow's strength is formidable indeed. It's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. Jin Xinyan is only a tool today, and it's still Jun Haoyin and Zhuqiu Feng behind him. Otherwise, no one would possess the ability to shut down all the book collections. Then what should we do? Without a cauldron and high-quality medicinal materials, the Heavenly Drive Soul Competition will be difficult." Han Yuro spoke in a light voice. Su Yi pondered deeply in midair before he turned around to look at Zhongzhen Peak, and the space between his brows was filled with a serious expression as he said, "Let's go back and discuss this with Senior Gyue first." After everyone left, within a hall on Zhongzhen Peak, a slender figure stood with his hands behind his back. He looked at Jin Xinyun, who was groaning on the ground, and said angrily, "You overestimate yourself. Even Master can't do anything to him, yet you insist on trying." Elder Tong, who was standing beside Jin Xianyun, helped Jin Xianyun out of the predicament and said respectfully, "Young Palace Master Jun, this brat Su is indeed extremely talented. He was able to defeat Xianyun, who was one big stage above him. This old man also did not expect this. Otherwise, what young Palace Master Jun would see today would be Su Yi's corpse. Young Palace Lord Jun, you must be careful if you meet him in the future." Jun Haoyan was slightly older than Jin Xianyun by 2 years and was in his early 30s. Recently, he had already broken through to the middle stage of the 4th rank. His soul control Dao was even more outstanding among the younger generation of the entire Heavenly Command Palace. No one could surpass him. His master had been the acting Palace Master for many years, and the Palace Master had been cultivating in seclusion for many years. So, everyone had already taken Zhuqiu Feng to be the Palace Master, and Jun Haoyan was the young Palace Master. If Jun Haoyan could win the Heavenly Command Soul competition this time, he would be able to directly establish his and his master's position in the Heavenly Command Palace. After many years of mediation and planning, among the 18 experts, the commanders and teaching elders had already changed sides and pledged allegiance to him. Among the 10 great elders, Gyue was the center. However, there were also a few peripheral elders who had changed their minds. However, everything had to be based on the results of this Heavenly Command Soul competition. Thinking of this, Jun Haoyan's sword-like eyebrows furrowed, and coldness filled his eyes. He said angrily, "Master has already promised not to make things difficult for Su Yi before the soul competition. It's better not to have this thought." Elder Tong's lips curled into a smile as he leaned closer and said, "Young Palace Master, listen to me. Just in case, it's better to be prepared." So, in the hall, the 3 of them huddled together and discussed their next move closely. After a while, Elder Tong and Jin Xianyun's faces were full of evil smiles, but Jun Haoyan's brows were slightly solemn. In the small Lingyue villa, a fragrance rose in spirals. Everyone gathered together again. When Tian Chong heard Su Yi's words, he immediately scolded, "You're out of your mind. Do they really think the Heavenly Command Palace is owned by their family?" Li Shiran and Ah Chu also pursed their lips tightly, burning with anger. Not being able to use the Heavenly Command Palace's collection was extremely disadvantageous for Lingyue Peak. Elder Gyue's kind face gradually turned serious. He said in a deep voice, "Sect Master Su is right. Lingyue Peak will not be restrained by others. If they really want to make things difficult for Lingyue Peak, I, Gyue, will fight them to the death." As soon as he finished speaking, Gyue stroked his beard and said in a deep voice, "Lingyue Peak does have medicinal herbs and ironware, but they are far from being comparable to the Zhongjin collection of the Heavenly Command Palace. Everyone in the Heavenly Command Soul competition will want to take out excellent spiritual herbs and weapons. This is going to be a little difficult." Su Yi's heart sank. This was going to be difficult. Even if they agreed to let him borrow freely, they would still make things difficult for him. He turned to look at Tian Wu and said, "Senior Gyue, Tian Wu, does Lingyue Peak have a good fire cauldron?" Tian Wu scratched his head and looked at Su Yi. He said with some difficulty, "Yes, but they are all Taoist artifacts. Moreover, Taoist artifacts have spirits and will recognize their masters. Brother Su, do you have a good fire cauldron?" Su Yi sighed heavily in his heart. He did have one, but it was not on him. "I don't. I'm just afraid that Zhuqiu Feng will use a Saint Artifact fire cauldron to help his team win." The Heavenly Command Palace had existed for tens of thousands of years. There must be a Saint Artifact elixir cauldron in the Zhongjin collection. Zhuqiu Feng would definitely occupy it. "Mysterious Fire Wu Cauldron," Senior Gyue murmured. At this point, overcoming the difficulty was an opportunity. Gyue and Su Yi looked at each other and smiled. Gyue quickly stood up and said to the others, "Sect Master Su, you and Miss Han should cultivate in Lingyue Peak for the next 2 days. Don't be distracted. I'll go to the other elders and see if I can borrow some." Su Yi nodded heavily. This was the most feasible method at the moment. Compared to the other peaks that cultivated every day, Lingyue Peak had only gained popularity recently. There were too few treasures. The treasures that were originally in the central province had been taken over by the Heavenly Command Palace after the change of Palace Master. After the discussion, everyone went to focus on their cultivation. Han Yuro focused on cultivating her soul energy and meditating on Lingyue Peak. Tian Wu took Li Shiran and Ah Chu to guide them on the alchemy encyclopedia. This time, they weren't the main force, but they still needed to understand the basics. Su Yi, on the other hand, began to concentrate on cultivating the art of driving the heavens in his room. A day passed by in a blur. Night fell, and the sky was filled with stars. In the middle of the night, Lingyue Peak was filled with water vapor. Clouds moved back and forth between the peaks like a flood. Under the quiet night, the Lingyue Peak was filled with candlelight. The entire Heavenly Command Mountain was in a state of tension. The upcoming Heavenly Command Soul competition had become the most important thing in everyone's heart. They were looking forward to it and waiting for it. Chapter 1609. Inside the quaint little room, Su Yi focused on cultivating the art of driving the heavens. His hands were placed on his thighs, and mysterious runes were constantly floating around his body. There were constantly flowing lights flowing out like divine radiance rippling. His spiritual sense gradually covered the entire Lingyue Peak. Su Yi could feel every movement of the 100 Herbs flower. Clang! Su Yi immediately opened his eyes. There was a sound of something breaking through the air outside the room, and a soft sound of metal clashing gradually faded away. A powerhouse! Su Yi suddenly opened his eyes, and there was a burst of light. He could feel that there was a very well-hidden aura outside the room that was quietly disappearing. Senior Guyue? Su Yi immediately got up and opened the door. He saw that in the small courtyard, moonlight was pouring down like mercury. There was no one, only a shadow, swaying in the night wind. Just as he was about to return to his room, Su Yi suddenly turned around. There was a small cauldron on the stone platform in the small courtyard. Under the moonlight, there was a strange light, and the purple light was very dazzling. The light soared into the sky, and the purple and demonic flames continued to rise. In the dazzling flames, Su Yi got closer and saw that it was an exquisite square cauldron. It was the purple flame sun cauldron that was close to Yunjing. At this time, the purple flame sun cauldron was light purple. It was supported by 4 legs, and the mouth of the cauldron had 2 ears. The walls of the cauldron were engraved with a 3-legged golden crow holding the sun. The deep and ancient aura seemed to have come from ancient times. Under the illumination of the moonlight, an incomparably ferocious fluctuation was released above the void. Su Yi rushed to the stone platform and grabbed the small cauldron. His heart was in turmoil as he exclaimed, "Purple flame sun cauldron?" He carefully looked at it and confirmed that it was the purple flame sun cauldron that he and Yunjing got that day. He said softly, "Purple flame sun cauldron, why is it here? Is Jing here too?" Looking around, the surrounding air was slowly filled with spiritual energy, but there was no trace of a single person. Immediately, he became very anxious. Jing it must be because Jing knows that I need the fire cauldron and specifically sent it to me. Su Yi was absolutely convinced that this was done by Yunjing, but why didn't Yunjing show herself? Soon after, he circulated the Origin Supreme technique. The peerless energy of the art of controlling the heavens surged like waves. Then he stomped his feet in the air. A monstrous aura immediately surged out from his body and rushed toward the forest in the distance. Above the void, Su Yi's rising Yao's 100 transformation steps was pushed to the extreme. He was like a flaming butterfly flying rapidly in the air. He turned and flipped in the air, and in a few moments, he had already flown past a few mountain peaks. "Bro, wake up." Yes. The soul puppet was still resting in the entryway. It opened its misty eyes, not knowing what had happened. The iron soulfish was pleasantly surprised when he sensed the waves of energy coming from Su Yi's chest. Purple Flame Sun Cauldron. Isn't it with little Yin? Yes, Jing must be nearby, but why didn't she come see me? Quick, help me feel Yun Jing's aura. Her cultivation aura has skyrocketed. It's hard for me to feel it. Hearing this, the soul puppet's expression immediately became solemn. A black light flickered in his deep, murderous eyes, and a majestic, genuine chi surged out and spread out. I can't find her. Yun Jing is already an extraordinary girl. After she received the benefits, she became even more extraordinary. Now, she has already escaped far away, and there's no trace of her. He stepped on the dark sky. The night wind blew against the mountain peaks. His resolute eyes were full of disappointment. He looked at the forest in the distance. His robe fluttered in the wind. He did not know where to go. Since she's here, why didn't she show herself? What have I done? It was the first time the iron soulfish had seen Su Yi so absent-minded. For a moment, he was speechless. Since little Yin sent you the purple flame sun cauldron, she must be paying attention to your movements. You can't lose your confidence. The iron soulfish comforted him with a solemn expression. Restraining his aura, Su Yi raised his hand and touched his chin. He said, since Jing sent me the purple flame sun cauldron, she must also hope that I can win the riding soul competition. Fine, let's prepare for the riding soul competition first. Whoosh whoosh. At this moment, a few black figures came from the forest in the distance. Under the moonlight, they looked like several black human-shaped birds. There's someone there, the iron soulfish whispered. Su Yi immediately restrained his aura. Unexpectedly, there was a sound of something breaking through the air. Between heaven and earth, there was a sudden gathering of strong soul energy. Along with the air, it directly crushed toward Su Yi. Oh no, Su Yi had a bad premonition in his heart. It was the strength of a beginner rank 4. In just a moment, the figure on the mountain in the distance urged an even more violent pressure, attacking like lightning. A violent force suddenly emerged, and when it struck down, the whole void suddenly trembled. Immediately, the fire attribute Yuan Qi in Su Yi's hand suddenly surged. Countless fist prints instantly collided with the pressure, and sparks flew everywhere. When the two collided, the space suddenly rippled like stormy waves. The energy of heaven and earth whizzed out from the mountain, turning into a substantial attack that enveloped the mountain. Sand and dust filled the sky, and the void rumbled. The muffled sound was extremely loud in the silent heaven and earth. The terrifying collision was instantly covered by another wave of pressure. The whole heaven and earth trembled, as if it was being suppressed, constantly fluctuating. Who is it? Su Yi growled in his heart. It was obvious that these people were coming for him. They took advantage of the time when he came out to attack him. Visible to the naked eye, the soul fluctuations of the few figures in the distance were extremely violent. It seemed that they were well prepared. Su Yi immediately became cautious. In the past few days, Senior Gyue had gone to find the other elders. If he went back to Lingyue Peak directly and was found out that Gyue was not there, it would lead to a disaster. Let's go to Zhongjin Peak. He made up his mind. Even the people of Yuqian Palace would not dare to kill at Zhongjin Peak. When he reached Zhongjin Peak, there would naturally be a way to expose these people's true identities. Boom! The murderous intent in Su Yi's eyes soared, and the anger emitted from his body was like an erupting volcano. No matter who it was, if they threatened him tonight, Su Yi would repay them 100-fold. Suddenly, Su Yi's figure flashed, and the palm print in his hand changed. A fist print suddenly broke through the pressure. Under the influence of the art of taming heaven, the fist print shattered the void. The entire space seemed to have completely solidified at this moment. An incomparably powerful energy aura swept out like a hurricane amidst the fist imprints that filled the sky. The monstrous power blasted towards the three black figures in the distance. Dot! The three figures clearly did not expect Su Yi to use such an extreme method to meet force with force. The three of them separated in three directions like a trident. The moment they separated, A milky white vortex rose from under Su Yi's feet. Chapter 16:10. Su Yi was like a fiery red divine bird, rushing straight to the front of the central quake. The sound of the wind breaking through the air rang out, and the huge shock wave accompanied by the earth-shattering energy drifted away. 3 black figures stood on the mountain peak with their hands crossed, laughing coldly. The voice of an incomparably old man came faintly, sneering coldly. "Chase, there's a path to heaven, but you don't want to take it. There's no door to hell, but you barge in, break into the central quake at night, kill him on the spot." Then, the one who spoke kept the storm-like energy back into his sleeves. The old man flung himself into the air and calmly rushed towards the front of the central quake with the other 2 figures. "This Su Yi is going to the front of the central quake. How are we going to kill him?" "Elder Tong." The old man's yuan qi vibrated under his feet, and his soul energy locked on his Su Yi in front of him. He said in a low voice, "The central quake array is the defensive array of our imperial palace. Unless it's important, no one is allowed to enter. Break into the central quake at night. I must use the central quake array to kill Su Yi." On the other side, an obviously weaker voice said softly, "But Su Yi can activate the array. Do you have the confidence?" "Kiki." The old voice seemed to come from the depths of the earth, cold and gloomy. He said indifferently, "The central quake array has always been managed by our Elder Tong. There are restrictions set by the experts of the Imperial Palace. Other than the Palace Master, only I am familiar with the opening chant. How can an ignorant child compare to this old man? It's fine if young Palace Master Jun doesn't participate. As long as he give the order to remove the guards tonight, we will definitely succeed." The 2 young black figures beside him looked at each other and smiled. Their eyes were full of surprise, and they suddenly sped up, eager to see Su Yi get killed before the central quake. The mountain wind was chilly, and the moonlight was striking. In front of Zhongzhen Peak, the twinkling lights were exceptionally lonely in the wilderness of the peaks. The moon was dark, and the wind was strong. It was a day of murder and arson, and the bone-chilling coldness made people unconsciously smell a trace of extreme danger. The Fire Phoenix's phantom carried the attribute light that filled the sky and rushed over. It was Su Yi who had rushed over from the mountain forest. As soon as he arrived at the square, the 3 black-robed men behind him also rushed over like shadows and landed on the square. Then, the shadows gathered together. The 3 black-robed men's eyes flickered and they laughed strangely. "Su Yi, where do you think you're going?" Su Yi's ears were extremely sharp. Even if he had concealed his aura and disguised his voice, he could still recognize him at once. Immediately, the corners of his mouth curled up into a contemptuous smile. Was what Elder Tong said during the day just a fart? Coming to denounce me at night? He even brought 2 lackeys with him. "Ji Fei Bao, Jin Xianyun, get over here. You." Su Yi's words immediately made Elder Tong angry. He did not expect that he would be recognized by Su Yi at a glance. Suddenly, his eyes were filled with murderous intent. His expression was ferocious as he said loudly, "What, Elder Tong? You broke into Zhongzhen at night. Everyone has the right to kill you. Prepare to die." The other 2 black-robed men were also enraged. The joints of their hand were pressed so hard that creaking sounds could be heard, and they were purplish red. Looking at Su Yi, they wanted to chop him into pieces. They bellowed furiously, "Su Yi, I only wanted to test your strength so that you wouldn't be too arrogant. I didn't expect you to be so stupid as to come to Zhongzhen Peak yourself. You'll regret every word you've said today. Prepare to die." Boom. Elder Tong took a deep breath, and his hand seals changed and condensed. Suddenly, his eyes flickered, and he signaled Jin Xianyun and Ji Feibao to back off. Immediately after, he formed a hand seal, and an extremely majestic palm print condensed in the sky like lightning. In that instant, the weather in the sky changed color, and the extremely dense energy of the world instantly gathered, as if it was attracted. The yin and yang diagrams on the ground kept on changing, intersecting and fusing at a low altitude, forming an extremely huge black and white palm print. The palm print carried an extremely dense spiritual pressure, as if it had transcended heaven and earth. Su-yi looked at Elder Tong's overflowing aura, and his heart trembled. Su-yi, be prepared to fight to the death. The formation in this square is no small matter. This old man is activating the restriction. He wants to borrow the formation's power to kill you immediately. The iron soulfish shouted in his heart. Bang! 5 elements chi, birth of heaven and earth. Man's life is in heaven, and his condition is in the body. Extreme yin leads to the flourishing of yang. When heaven and man meet, victory will be achieved. In an instant, Elder Tong kept changing the palm print in his hand as he chanted. An extremely huge yin-yang seal condensed in front of him. Its aura was overwhelming, and the shadow grew bigger and bigger. The black and white light rotated and merged back and forth. The energy of heaven and earth surged, and the air around it solidified. The surrounding space rippled like boiling water, churning and churning. In an instant, extremely dense energy appeared in front of him. At the same time, Su-yi's Origin Supreme technique was raised to the extreme, and the driving heaven art condensed in his body. Under such a terrifying amount of heaven and earth energy, the vitality in his body and the aura around him became restless. The demon god battlesuit and golden dragon's aura that came out in response also became restless. Like a ferocious beast, they roared at the yin-yang seal that was getting bigger and bigger. Driving heaven yin-yang seal, die! Elder Tong shouted angrily. Boom! The spiritual strength of a beginner grade. 5 caused the surrounding space to tremble violently. Su-yi's face darkened as he roared. He used the driving heaven art to resist the pressure, and the Origin Supreme technique to resist the driving heaven yin-yang seal. Whoosh! He had already taken out the blood demon killing god sword. The huge sword fell on the ground, and cracks spread across the ground like a spider web. A bloody light soared into the sky and filled the void. Hiss! Amidst the overwhelming energy, the driving heaven yin-yang seal arrived in front of him. Su-yi's face changed drastically, and he immediately performed the Fuyao's 100 transformation steps. Unparalleled vitality surged in his body, and the huge power made his body of the guardian deity soar. Su-yi shouted in his heart. Since he couldn't avoid it, he might as well face it head-on. An overwhelming golden light swept across, and the golden-red shadow of a mythical bird appeared behind Su-yi. Mythical bird phoenix? Jin Xinyan and Ji Feibao took 2 steps back, and they were shocked. The mythical bird let out a clear cry, and as it flapped its wings, it hit a fierce, domineering, majestic, and destructive aura. Between layers, it formed dozens of golden-red waves of aura in front of it. Blood Phoenix rends the sky. Elder Tong shouted. He knew that Su-yi was going to fight with all his might. He shouted at Jin Xinyan and Ji Feibao. Both of you, open the enchantment and restrain your aura. Don't make a big commotion. Otherwise, it won't end well. Suddenly, the clouds in all directions moved, and the central peak shook violently. Sonorous golden light swept across the heaven and earth. Since the other party came prepared, the central peak was a dead end. Today, he would fight to survive. Chapter 16:11. The Origin Supreme technique in his body circulated again, and the 2 entrances shone brightly. The iron soulfish also unleashed his energy to the extreme and roared. Kid, let's go together. Let's see if it's him or us who can withstand this formation. Instantly, the heavenly imperial yin-yang seals might decreased slightly, and the powerful black and white light dimmed a little. However, it still couldn't withstand the restrictions of the heavenly imperial palace's experts. Elder Tong roared furiously in his heart, and the light shattered in all directions again. It was as if the heavens were punishing fiercely. Fight! Su-yi's eyes flickered, and the Emperor Sparrow's illusory image became clearer. It burst forth with endless scarlet gold light, and scarlet gold flames scattered from the void, almost engulfing the world. Boom! In the fierce golden light hurricane, the phoenix divine bird was filled with scarlet-red flames. Its eyes were incomparably terrifying as it looked down on the world. A blood-red, long sword streaked across the horizon and rushed through the flames. As the Emperor Sparrow flapped its wings, it blasted towards the yin-yang seal. Instantly, the sword released a surging pressure that came from the immemorial era. As the blood-red color spread, the scarlet-red murderous cries, the ancient sacrificial chants, and the runes of the yin-yang seal were incessant and sonorous. Bang! The terrifying might of the blood phoenix split the sky, and the heavenly imperial yin-yang seal violently clashed in the void. In an instant, the entire space was distorted. Waves of terrifying energy came from all directions, and the immense pressure tore the space apart. Continuous, terrifying sonic booms broke through the barrier, and it was as if the entire world was shaking. It was breathtaking. Ji Fei Bao and Jin Xinyun, who had set up a simple barrier, were bleeding profusely from their 7 orifices. Their chests caved in from the huge impact, and they blacked out as they fell to the ground. Bang! The barrier collapsed, and the huge impact spread to both sides, destroying everything along the way, bringing about an incomparably terrifying huge ravine. As the raging flames swept across, the sky was filled with raging flames that could burn all living things. Oh, the terrifying demonic aura of the divine bird spread out in all directions under the impact of the yin-yang seal. It impacted the entire plaza and destroyed a large area of bricks, flowers, and grass. The plaza was instantly devastated, and it was a shocking sight. Dang dang! There was a burst of light, and a strange phenomenon appeared in the sky. Elder Tong was pushed back several dozen feet by the tremendous force of the impact before he managed to stop himself. He clutched the wound on his chest that had already eroded, and a large cloud of blood sprayed out. Poochie! Faint starlight circulated in the horizon, and the sun and moon were reversed. The moment the divine bird disappeared, its roar spread out in all directions like a gale. Jin Xinyun's eyes narrowed as he recovered from his shock. When he saw the situation clearly, he roared loudly towards the swiftly moving figure in the depths of the flames. Not good. That kid wants to escape. He struggled to get up, but the injuries in his eyes made him fall to the ground once again. He was like a pile of mud, and his chest was dripping with blood. Elder Tong was also scared out of his wits. He was not completely dead after such a surging collision between heaven and earth. When he thought of this, he spat out another mouthful of blood from his chest and said weakly, "That is the peak after the epicenter. Let him go, he won't live for long." Hoo-hoo! As soon as he finished speaking, Elder Tong sat on the ground and adjusted his breathing and meditated in the golden light that filled the sky after the shadow dissipated. That blow just now had exhausted all of his soul energy and vitality. He did not have the slightest bit of strength left. He did not believe that Su-Yi, who was only at the beginner stage of the 3rd rank, would be able to withstand such a violent blow. Looking at the receding figure, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly as he said softly, "Su-Yi, you really don't walk through the door of life and enter the door of death. If you don't die in my hands, you must die in the hands of that woman, Kiki." On the other side, Su-Yi, who was escaping at full speed, was already extremely weak. His clothes were completely torn apart, and his skin that was as smooth as jade had long been exposed. The places where he had been hit by the huge force had already been split open, revealing charred scars. Inch by inch, his skin had cracked open, and blood kept flowing out in the night wind. However, Su-Yi's eyes were weak but determined. Only he knew that his entire body was on the verge of collapse. Now, he was completely relying on his willpower to run forward. Run! I must not return to Linghua Peak. Su-Yi kept reminding himself. At this moment, Su-Yi was running for his life based on his intuition. This was definitely the fastest and the biggest crisis that Su-Yi had ever encountered. The Taishu spirit sea in his body was extremely dry. The first hidden latch had lost its light, and in the second hidden latch, the yin-yang light was extremely dim. The iron soulfish had already closed its eyes. The aura around his body was ethereal, and his thin body was covered in blood. There were wounds all over his body, and it was a ghastly sight. The light of the golden dragon pattern had also faded. The shattered demon god battlesuit had also turned into crystals and scattered in the strong wind. Su-Yi gritted his teeth and flew toward the back of the mountain with all his might, with the blood demon killing god sword. As for the heavenly origin demon soul in his body, it was emitting an incomparably resplendent light due to Su-Yi's incessant urging. His legs were unsteady, and Su-Yi could not tell which direction he was going. He could only keep running forward. The more he ran, the weaker he became. At this moment, the mysterious ball of light in his body surged. The light dispersed like a warm current in his meridians. Su-Yi was shocked and kept muttering, "No, I don't want to borrow your power. I don't want it." Su-Yi knew very well that if Yin Jing had not been by his side when he had borrowed the mysterious ball of light's energy to fight with Xiehong House and snatch the crimson heavenly crystal, he would have died without a doubt. The mysterious ball of light was like a double-edged sword. Going too far was as bad as falling short. Su-Yi, who had lost all consciousness, found it difficult to control the mysterious ball of light's energy. Suddenly, Su-Yi roared in his heart, "I don't want your power." Subsequently, countless images appeared in the weak Su-Yi's eyes. Countless figures flowed in front of his eyes. His hands, which were holding the broken sword, were trembling. Su-Yi's dispirited aura suddenly surged again as he made a final stand against the mysterious ball of light. Grandfather, father, mother, brothers Qinxue, Yinjing, and Lu Ruoshi. I can't die. I still have a lot of things to do. I can't die. I still have to take revenge. Saint Mountain and Elder Tong. Bang. Immediately, as if sensing something, the last bit of Yuan Qi energy in the divine, profound spiritual meridians burst out and dispersed the mysterious ball of light. In an instant, Su-Yi's last bit of consciousness was completely drowned in darkness. PFFF. The divine, profound spiritual meridians cracked, and countless small cracks appeared in his meridians. Blood gushed out from his body as he was unable to withstand it. Under the impact of the huge force, Su-Yi's mouth was bleeding more and more. From the inside out, blood spurted out violently. In the end, he could not withstand it. He staggered and lost consciousness. Su-Yi fell into the dense forest below, like a bird with broken wings. Chapter 16:12. Rustle, rustle. The broken sword followed Su-Yi's body as it streaked across the sky, falling straight down. In an instant, the murderous intent of the red light that filled the sky dissipated like smoke. The radiance and the light followed, exploding and dissipating in the mountain forest. Looking from afar, a blazing fireball fell from the sky in the middle of the night. It carried the power to move mountains and fill seas as it smashed into the forest. Countless sparks suddenly exploded like bursting magma, igniting wantonly. Everywhere it passed, there were terrifying burn marks. It was extremely terrifying. The sea of trees was thousands of layers, the sound of dense waves, the whistling of the night wind at the back of Zhongjing Peak was immediately suffused with a deathly silence. In the midst of the gloomy green forest, an earth-shattering crash resounded through the vault of heaven. The incomparably scorching temperature rose in an instant, spreading rapidly in the forest. The raging flames, like a plague, rose from every corner of the forest, illuminating the entire horizon red. The overbearing aura of destruction filled every corner of the forest. Boom! The tongues of flame twisted wildly. In the blink of an eye, a layer of dense fire net was woven in the middle of the dense forest. The dense fire net continued to move towards the depths of Zhongjing Peak. The crackling sound of explosions resounded everywhere, like the cries of 10,000 ghosts. The burning temperature quickly set off ripples in the void, incomparably fierce. In the middle of the fire pool, he was lying quietly in the middle of a deep pit. His hair was already burnt, his whole body was covered with open wounds, pitch black, dripping with blood. The burnt parts were emitting bursts of black smoke. He had already fainted long ago, without the slightest reaction. In a short moment, the spreading fire had already become bigger and bigger. The entire mountain peak was incomparably scorching hot due to the wind blowing in the void. The flying flames continued to rise, as if they wanted to compete with the sky. Just at this time, suddenly, from the height of the flames, a noble and ordinary beautiful figure walked out. Her snow-white, slender legs, the arc was extremely perfect. On her flawless jade legs, her skin was as white as snow, extremely alluring under the illumination of the fire. Wrapped in a long skirt was a pair of plump jade-like huge breasts. Above her snow-white, charming collarbone, there was a trace of lingering fragrance hidden in the depths of the wind. The nameless woman's face was covered with a white veil. Her eyes were clear and serene. As the fiery wind blew, one could occasionally see her snow-white cheeks. Her jade-like feet tapped lightly in the air, and her figure seemed to have walked out of a painting. She looked down at the unconscious Su-yi from the air, and under the thin veil, her cold and lonely face revealed the maturity of experience. "This fellow has delivered himself to our doorstep," the mysterious woman spoke softly. She carefully sized up Su-yi with her watery eyes. She only saw the faint golden dragon aura flickering all over Su-yi's body, and the bright patterns on his elbows and feet faintly carried a sweet dragon roar. The dim light around his body was mixed with a thick and long aura. It was like 1,000-year-old energy that had crossed the heavens and earth, revealing Su-yi's extraordinariness. A deep look of surprise appeared in the mysterious woman's eyes. Her cold and tranquil face, which was as cold as ice, moved slightly. "Fine, I'll bring you back. Whether you survive or not will depend on your own luck." Hiss, hiss. The nameless woman gently raised her hand, and a stream of icy blue primordial chi flew out from her sleeves. The monstrous flames around Su-yi were quickly frozen, forming countless tiny ice crystal flowers. The entire world was born of water and fire, and it was incomparably mysterious. The Yuan Chi seemed to have a spirit, landing on the ground and quickly turning into a majestic ice-blue ribbon, wrapping around Su-yi's body layer by layer. Su-yi's body was like a soldering iron, and his body continued to rise. The nameless woman nimbly turned around and walked towards the back of the mountain. At the same time, Su-yi also flew off the ground under the agility of the ribbon. As soon as the nameless woman left, the sea of flames in the forest was instantly extinguished. It was as if a huge basin of cold water had been poured over the vegetation in the mountains. The air above was extremely cold. In just a short while, the barbaric beasts in the distance experienced the two types of aura, one cold and one hot. They all scurried away and fled in all directions. Oh, some of the weaker beasts immediately prostrated themselves on the ground and wailed in agony. They were in extreme pain, and their howls resonated throughout the entire mountain. The loud and dull howls of the barbaric beasts could be heard all the way from the back of the mountain to the front of the mountain. Elder Tong, who was sitting on the ground with his eyes filled with shock, saw the fire rain dissipating. He instantly spat out a mouthful of blood from his chest. Jin Xianyun and Ji Feibao's faces were ashen. They didn't expect such a huge commotion to happen. They endured the pain of their meridian's injuries and looked at Elder Tong anxiously. "Elder, what should we do? The back of the mountain is on fire." Elder Tong's mouth twitched slightly, and he said fiercely, "Tonight's incident, just say that you discovered Su-yi sneaking into the formation in the middle of the night when you were patrolling. Then we discovered him and activated the array together. In the end, Su Yi escaped to the back of the mountain. All right. The two of them reckoned that even if Su Yi could escape to the back of the mountain alive, the palace master wouldn't let him off for creating such a huge fire. Just say it like that. The two of them looked at each other while their eyes were filled with coldness. At this moment, numerous people had already gathered on the square, and this included Zhuo Feng, Jun Haoyan, and the others who were at the front of the mountain. Who exactly was it? Get the fuck out here. Zhuo Feng stood upright at the center of the square with a fierce gaze, and he felt extreme pain in his heart as he looked at the square that was covered in desolation. The Soul Drive competition was about to begin, and the square was the main arena. It had actually suffered such destruction. So, how could Zhuo Feng not be anxious? The three of them that had guilty consciences immediately struggled to crawl over to Zhuo Feng and said in low voices, "Palace Master, it's all that Su Yi's fault." According to what they said from before, the three of them spoke the truth, causing Zhuo Feng and Jun Haoyan's expressions to turn grim. As he looked carefully at the cracks on the ground of the square, Zhuo Feng said with a bewildered expression, "Su Yi's cultivation at the early stage of the third rank is actually capable of fighting you head-on. He's probably dead." Elder Tong laughed dryly with an embarrassed expression. "I'm a soul controller at the early stage of the fifth rank, yet I can't even kill a soul controller at the early stage of the third rank. It doesn't matter if he's dead or not. He's already at the rear of the peak. If the Palace Master blames us, then we have to think of a complete plan and not allow the news to be leaked." Jun Haoyan suddenly thought of something and said, "What about Elder Gyue? Big Brother Haoyan, Elder Gyue doesn't seem to be at Linghua Peak. It'll be another headache if we wait for him to return. That old geezer is famous for being protective. I hope Su Yi didn't die at our hands." Zhuo Feng had a gloomy expression as he gazed at the peak behind him that had already recovered its calm, and the seething clouds ceaselessly surged, causing it to seem extremely mysterious. After that, Zhuo Feng ordered everyone present to not speak of this matter, and the square would be restored within 2 days. "Master, will the Palace Master really blame us?" Jun Haoyan asked Zhuo Feng carefully after he returned to his residence. Zhuo Feng sighed deeply, and then he glanced at the surroundings and said, "You don't know how many years she's lived, and her temper is extremely strange. All those years ago, Duanmu Xiaoman." Chapter 16:13. Zhuo Feng thought for a moment and gulped down a mouthful of saliva before he said in a light voice, "That person's whereabouts were unknown all those years ago, and the entire Heavenly Command Palace suffered misfortune because Duanmu Xiaoman annihilated all of that person's enemies. In the end, the matter was left unsettled, and they were unable to find that person's whereabouts. After many years, they finally gave up on this thought and simply hid in the rear peak to cultivate. From that moment onward, we're not allowed to mention that person's name." Jun Haoyan grew more and more shocked as he listened, and his handsome face was covered in a solemn expression as he said in a low voice, "Elder Gyue has always been on the Palace Master's side. If Su Yi really dies, then Elder Gyue will bring trouble to the Palace Master. It would truly be a calamity." Zhuo Feng said gloomily, "I don't think that kid will die so easily. If he's still alive, Master, feel free to speak." Jun Haoyan gazed respectfully at Zhuo Feng, who seemed to hesitate to speak. "Are you able to break open the Grand Formation by yourself? Are you able to go head on against Elder Tong and survive?" Zhuo Feng's eyes seemed to glow. Jun Haoyan shook his head. He who was invincible amongst his peers had just broken through to the mid-rank of the fourth rank, and it would be difficult to advance any further. "It's very difficult." Zhuo Feng patted Jun Haoyan heavily on the shoulder and said encouragingly, "You're the hope of my entire life. Even if his physical strength is heaven-defying, his cultivation is strange, and even if he survives the rear peak, you'll definitely be able to defeat him. As for the other matters, I will take care of them for you. You don't have to think too much about it." Jun Haoyan gazed deeply at his master. Since a young age, his master had placed all the heavy burdens on his shoulders, and they complemented each other. Up until now, Zhuo Qiufeng's dream of becoming the palace master had become Jun Haoyan's goal. On his path of ceaselessly seeking the position of palace master, Jun Haoyan had been cultivating desperately all these years while his master had been cutting off thorns for him. For the sake of winning the hearts of the people, he'd done many things that he shouldn't do. No matter what, I must obtain the first in the heavenly command soul competition this time. Jun Haoyan's icy cold eyes were slowly filled with rage. Late at night, the heavenly command palace that had been bustling for an entire night had finally calmed down. A faint white moon hung high in the sky, and it complemented the sky that was about to rise. Bad news spread like wildfire. Soon, the news of Su Yi being heavily injured and sent to the rear peak reached Linghua Peak. Tianho woke Han Yuro, Li Shi ran, and the others up in the middle of the night. When they heard the news, Li Shi ran, and Ah Chu were stunned. Li Shiran's eyes were filled with tears, while Ah Chu's face was livid as he glared at senior brother Tianho. Senior brother Tianho, you're lying? You're lying, aren't you? Ah Chu started to get anxious and then laughed out loud. You must have thought that we were working too hard, so you woke us up in the middle of the night to get some rest, right? She looked at Tianho with teary eyes, hoping that Tianho would nod his head. In return, Tianho shook his head. I heard that the senior and junior brothers at the front peak all saw Brother Su escape to the back of the mountain and was struck by the protective formation. Even if he was fine, when he reached the back of the mountain, the palace master gave the order that trespassers would be killed. I'm afraid that this time, Brother Su. Hearing this, Li Shi Ran's delicate body suddenly trembled, and she slumped into the chair. She turned her head away and kept sobbing. Ah Chu also lost his spirit in an instant and muttered, No, Brother Su is the king of geniuses, a great hero whose name shakes the central state. He's the hero who brought me to the sacred mountain to sweep away the thieves. No, he definitely won't die so easily. Han Yuro also stepped back, and her nose twitched. How could Su Yi, who saved her from the heavenly palace yesterday, die like this today? Senior brother Tianho, I want to go to the front peak to take a look. Tianho immediately stopped and comforted her softly. The front peak has been sealed. After the battle with Elder Tong, the front peak square has been destroyed. No one is allowed to enter now. We have to work overnight to repair the square. Why did he fight with Elder Tong? Han Yuro frowned slightly. According to the rumors outside, Su Yi broke into the front peak at night and peeked at the secrets of the Heavenly Pill Pavilion, triggering the protective formation. He was discovered by Ji Fei Bao and Jin Xianyun, and they called for Elder Tong. Elder Tong said that Su Yi was severely injured. Han Yuro was instantly enraged. Her eyes were like swords as she said, F***CK him. Su Yi doesn't even bother to go to your Heavenly Pill Pavilion during the day. Why would he go at night? Tianho also let out a long sigh and said angrily, I think so too. What should we do, Brother Su? Since the collapse of the Li family, Su Yi had always been by her side, like a guardian. Now that Su Yi was gone, she had no backbone at all. Han Yuro stomped her foot and gritted her teeth. Heavenly Palace is too much. Using such despicable means. She turned to look at the Li siblings and said firmly, Su, you will definitely come back. You mustn't lose your composure. Cultivate well. The heavenly soul race is about to begin. Li Shiran and Ah Chu wiped away their tears, and a look of determination gradually appeared in their red eyes. Senior brother Tianho, I'll leave this place to you. I'll leave the palace for a while, but I'll be back for the heavenly soul race. Tianho seemed to have thought of something and said, I've already sent someone to inform Master. Our status is too low. Let's wait for Elder Gyue to come back. Han Yuro waved her hand and said angrily, It's too late. These old men are really hateful. They're as famous as the Infinite Sect in Yinzhou. They're really humiliating the Infinite Sect. You guys wait for Elder Gyue at Linghua Peak. I'll be back soon. As soon as she finished speaking, essence chi suddenly appeared under her feet. The sky was slightly bright, and a fragrant wind drifted past, and her figure disappeared in the white sky. Let's go. Let's go cultivate. Don't waste Su Yi's good intentions. Tian Ho clenched his fists and stepped out of the door. In the quiet, deep forest, the pool water was crystal clear like stars falling from the sky. The unconscious Su Yi was lying inside, and the warm pool water flowed into Su Yi's mind through his meridians like a medicinal liquid. Hiss, hiss. Su Yi's body began to emit a mystical, icy blue light. Then, the fire essence chi in his body surged out, resisting the icy blue light. Two terrifying streaks of green light, one red and one blue, intertwined like dragons and snakes. They were extremely eye-catching in the void. The nameless woman from before sat in the forest, her eyes full of seriousness. She said softly, "This kid's desire to live is so strong. If he could be like this, I would have been able to find him back then." But no one knew that Su Yi's body was like an exploding boiler, and the essence chi in his body was like boiling water. The pool water that had just been poured into his body was sticking to his wounds in an orderly manner, emitting a strange light. Hiss, hiss. The heaven origin demon soul in his body was still shining brightly. The mysterious ball of light had been suppressed by Su Yi before he fainted, and now there was no movement. Boom! Then, the fire essence chi began to dissipate, and the earth essence chi began to rise again. Blue and yellow, they intertwined and fused together. Chapter 16:14. After an entire short moment, foul chi started to emanate from Su Yi's 7 apertures, and then it circulated repeatedly as the white-colored wind attribute energy and ice-blue energy resisted and condensed together. This fellow actually possesses 4 types of energy attributes. His water attribute energy is so dense, and it's innately compatible with the dark moon pool. A wave of surprise flashed in the mysterious woman's eyes. Never had she imagined that such mixed attribute energy would definitely be extremely mediocre if it was possessed by an ordinary person. Yet Su Yi was able to possess such accomplishments. He's truly a god. She flicked her sleeve, causing her white clothes to flutter lightly before her figure vanished. If this dark moon pool is able to hold on, then let me see your ability. The mysterious woman spoke with a gentle and graceful voice before vanishing. In the next few days, after Elder Gyue returned from the central continent and the other continents, he was furious, and he caused a ruckus at Zhongjin Peak, Zhuqiu Feng, and Elder Tong. In a short period of 2 days, Su Yi's name resounded throughout the entire Heavenly Command Palace. From charging furiously into Heavenly Command River at the beginning, to activating the Mountain Guarding Formation, to fighting Elder Tong, and losing his life at Zhongjin Peak. This string of events caused Su Yi to be slightly demonized. Everyone spread word of mouth about Su Yi's past, and they actually faintly started to compare him with that person in the rumors. In the end, the matter ended with Elder Tong being bashed up by Gyue. The entire Heavenly Command Palace started to seethe with excitement, and it was even to the extent that Elder Gyue directly fell out with the faction that Zhuqiu Feng represented. During these 2 days, Su Yi had always been soaking in the Dark Moon Pool. The day before the soul control competition, within the deep and dense forest, the mysterious woman was bored to death. Her slender legs moved ceaselessly beneath her snow-white skin that was faintly discernible as she walked up and down on the grass in a gentle and quiet manner, and her gaze changed ceaselessly as she gazed at Su Yi, who was within the pool. Presently, the glow around Su Yi's body was extremely dazzling already, and the aura within his body had gradually calmed down. Moreover, the burn injuries caused by the backlash from the fire attribute energy and mysterious ball of light had already been completely healed. His entire body soaked in the pool's water, while large beads of sweat flowed out from his chin, and his crystalline skin was like warm jade, extremely bright and translucent. This fleshly body is pretty good. His recovery ability is even more astonishing. The mysterious woman spoke softly. Looking at Su-yi, who was in the middle of the pool, the mysterious woman's eyes glowed brilliantly. Water? Crimson heavenly crystal? No wonder. The mysterious woman's face under the veil was filled with surprise. Above Su-yi's head, a constantly rotating blue ice crystal flashed, and the surrounding surface of the pool instantly froze into ice. Half of Su-yi's body was exposed outside. Under the surface of the ice, for layers of radiance flickered continuously, with the ice-blue radiance being the brightest. The mysterious woman's eyes shone with a sharp light as she said softly, "The aura in his body is causing trouble again. Chi-Chi." Under the energy fluctuations of the crimson water heavenly crystal, the entire surface of the ice instantly emitted an extremely terrifying sound. Along the surface of the ice, the flowers and plants began to freeze and wither. Monstrous waves rose into the sky, creating endless waves. Bang bang. The mysterious woman's expression changed drastically. In a flash, she appeared in front of Su-yi. A stream of yuan qi shot out from her palm, forcing the crimson water heavenly crystal into Su-yi's mind. Buzz buzz. In an instant, the aura of the entire heaven and earth caused the surrounding void to freeze for no reason. The mysterious woman shouted and took a step forward. Immediately, a vigorous and sharp aura spread out from her body like a divine ice phoenix. There was a divine light flashing in her eyes, causing one's heart to tremble for no reason. Boom! The mysterious woman's supreme aura that transcended heaven and earth spread out, and the entire mysterious five elements pool exploded. Su-yi seemed to wake up from a dream as he stood up abruptly. Su-yi, who was completely naked, still had very turbid eyes. In a daze, he saw a plain white robe. The huge shock wave tore apart the veil on the woman's face and sent it flying into the sky. A beautiful face appeared in front of Su-yi. Her hair was as soft as willow branches, and her eyes, which were like clear glass lamps, were filled with great shock. Between her thin eyebrows that seemed to be frowning, there was flirtatious affection. Her graceful bearing hid an extremely charming elegance. Su-yi, who had just woken up, seemed to be in a daze for a moment. The two of them looked at each other in the quiet forest. In an instant, her fairy-like face was like a blooming red lotus. Her snow-white skin was as smooth as snow. Her expression was startled as she looked at Su-yi in a daze and said anxiously, "What are you doing?" On Su-yi's tall and lean torso, the distinct muscles were undoubtedly releasing a manly aura. Under the light that filled the sky, the slightly bulging muscles revealed the charm of a man. His body was incomparably cold. Then, the spontaneously formed fire attribute yuan qi rolled in his body, mixing with the heat. Su-yi's skin immediately felt as if it had exploded. "You're shameless." Piak. The mysterious woman's slender hand struck out and landed squarely on Su-yi's face. An unparalleled aura emanated from her palm, creating a monstrous shockwave in the air. The ripples in the air quickly caused the mysterious woman's clothes to flutter. Bam! The mysterious woman immediately covered herself with her clothes. Her eyes were filled with shame and anger. She turned her hand and slapped Su-yi's face ruthlessly. The surging yuan qi in Su-yi's body was immediately stopped by the mysterious woman's surging aura. The abundant yuan qi in the great void spirit was like a pool of clear spring water that was instantly still. Su-yi, who was hit until he saw stars, woke up completely. Only then did he see the mysterious woman's face clearly. She was like a fairy from the heavens. Her eyebrows were like apricots, and her cheeks were like willow trees. "Who exactly are you?" A hoarse voice was released from Su-yi's throat. As if he was in a dream, Su-yi extended his right hand and wanted to touch her. At that moment, when the mysterious woman wanted to push Su-yi away, she realized that Su-yi had already blacked out and fell in her chest. The mysterious woman immediately pursed her lips and snorted. Such a manly aura made her gasp for breath. She used all her strength to push Su Yi to the ground. "You're the first person who dares to offend me like this. Die." The mysterious woman's palm shot out a ray of yuan qi. Her killing intent was monstrous and surging. Looking at Su Yi, who was lying on the ground, the mysterious woman was about to make her move when an old voice came from outside the forest. "Palace Master, Giyue requests to see you." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.